on the back wall, which we strive to abide by in every meeting, and we thank you for taking part in these meetings because that's a very critical component of that act. Just a little bit by way of guidance, we do invite you to please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. That's just really to respect the time of the board and to ensure that we have all community members invited and have plenty of time to invite that comment. We're going to invite you to come to the front table. If you have not done this before, we will ask you to come to this front table to share your thoughts. There is a microphone here. It really is not to put you on the spot. It really is just to ensure we maintain that order and are able to hear you, and that we can be sure that you are respected and heard in the meeting. So we would ask that you do that, please. We do ask that you please remember not to address an issue concerning an individual personnel or employee of the district. We do have legal considerations about that, so please do keep those comments concerning issues. Let's see. I think that about covers it, so I think we can get started. Once again, we thank you for coming. We do have a few folks who are interested in addressing the board. Is Mr. John ready to address the board at this time?
How are people doing this with their mask on? I guess.
You know what? I'm so comfortable if it's a little easier to just pull it down. We've got lots of distance here.
Okay.
Welcome.
Good evening to all members of the board. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Matthew John, 12012 North 161st Avenue. I have 3 daughters, a wife and 3 daughters. One is a graduate of Bennington who's currently studying honors elementary education at UNL. One is a junior, and one is a 5th grader. I do want to thank you for your time and commitment for serving the school district as a volunteer. I know more than most what type of commitment this entails, and I respect your time and efforts in what you do to provide this service to our community, so thank you for that. I do have some concerns I'd like to address tonight. I've written them out just for expediency. It's not really my usual style, but bear with me. There's a number of significantly disturbing things going on within our school district right now that need to be resolved very soon. Last month I attended the first meeting that I've been to for a while here at the school board, and I was very troubled and frankly disappointed when the room was packed with current and former female students and their parents wearing Title IX t-shirts, expecting to hear something, anything about Title IX. Other than Dr. Calderon, your opening statement about, I think it was either World or National Women's Day, we didn't hear anything. These people sat through a multi-hour meeting for nothing. I guess, frankly, I see why this matter has been driven to a lawsuit at this point. It's apparent to me that the administration in the school district, maybe even 1 or 2 board members, I hope not, but maybe 1 or 2 board members, are fully intending to fight this lawsuit to the finish, all the way to trial. At a minimum, they intend to fight it through the discovery process, incurring tens of thousands of dollars in wasted legal expenses along the way. These are taxpayer dollars that could be used to make this right. My guess is, in the end, your lawyer, whom I understand has never handled the Title IX lawsuit, will tell you to settle the case. Other school districts never let it go this far. Westside, Millard, OPS, Papillion La Vista, all settled with parents and students before a suit was filed. In fact, when news of the Bennington lawsuit hit the community, Millard sent a note to all their parents and students to let them know that they valued them and that they are continually evaluating their compliance. This is not what you did. What is the message you're trying to send to the females in our school district? Here's what they're hearing. Not only are you not going to be treated as equals, we're going to fight you with our time and treasure as long as we possibly can. This is not acceptable. You have before you tonight an agenda item where you intend to go into closed session to discuss potential litigation. Frankly, I'm curious what the potential is about this litigation. You've already been sued. Last month, the session lasted several hours. I can only surmise that there was a lot of arguing and finger pointing, because I believe some of you are on the right side. Since that time, nothing has changed. We're a month later, nothing has changed. No words have been spoken. The girls haven't been reassured that we're going to fix this. Nothing has changed. Here we are again tonight. You have a couple of opportunities to change course. When the vote is called tonight to go into executive session, you can vote no. You have to vote yes to go into executive session, as you well know. You can make a motion to have your discussion in public and make your positions publicly known. You can separate yourselves from those that want to have a fight to protect their precious egos, rather to admit the wrongs that occurred and work with the plaintiffs to settle this. They didn't ask for damages. They could have. Or, as this drags on, they can amend their complaint and add damages. So now it's not just about fixing what's wrong, it gets real expensive. Even punitive damages. The federal judge could also take it upon himself to add damages if this goes all the way to trial. Are you willing to take that chance? If you're not comfortable with this option, you can go ahead and vote to have your secret meeting. In that meeting, you can make your feelings known to your peers, to your fellow board members. With a legislative body, the power is in numbers. If more of you agree we shouldn't be fighting this than want to fight it, you have the power to change course. You can poll your fellow members in the meeting. Where do you stand on this, Mark? Where do you stand on this, Kara? Where do you stand on this, Heather? It's not an official vote, and you're perfectly legal to do that. You can then come out of executive session, and you should put a motion on the table to settle the case. If you want, word something like this. I make a motion that we schedule a meeting with the plaintiffs and their attorneys to work on settling this case. One of you needs to do this, and one of you needs to second this. The superintendent nor the president of the board, if she would choose to, I don't know that you would, they can't stop you from making this motion. You can make either of these motions. This needs to stop, and we need to change now. A vote of no confidence could be taken against the leadership of this district, namely our superintendent. People are tired of the fights, the battles, and complete and total disregard of the parents, students, and taxpayers of this district. We want leadership that works with the community on things like athletic field usage, partnerships, funding projects such as parking lots and digital scoreboards, other community-based efforts. I learned tonight, just before this meeting, I received an email from the school after asking for open records. The policy that was cited why we couldn't buy the digital boards with Booster Club money, there is no policy. It doesn't exist. But yet the Booster Club was told no. Why does something like that happen? I can tell you, I've been involved in many of these discussions. It happens a lot. This needs to change. The standard answer can no longer be no. One of the biggest fears in our community right now is that people stand up, there will be retaliation against our children. I've heard it time and again. I'm worried about it myself. Ask yourself, how we got to an environment like that, and who is responsible for that environment? You all know there's a number of issues that community members are currently looking into. Complaints have been filed or will be filed with various state agencies. Resolve this issue now before this gets out of hand. You have the power as a school board to collectively tell the administration what you want done. Don't be afraid. For too long, to me, it seemed like this is a board that works for the superintendent, not a superintendent that works for the board. Finally, you as a board work for the people. Remember that. Don't ever forget it. If you do, there's means of removing the board by the people to get people in office who will remember who they work for. I would certainly hope a recall election would not be required, but if this goes on long enough, all things are on the table. Thank you very much for your time and attention, getting this matter resolved quickly and fairly for all parties involved. I'd like to be able to tell my own daughters that Bennington Public Schools finally cares as much about them as they do about the boys. To date, I don't think I can honestly tell them that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. I wanted to note that I should have said before we began, I appreciate those comments. We do not, as a matter of practice, engage in dialogue, as this is our chance to listen to you during open forum. So please know, if you suggest and pose questions during your statement, the appropriate administrator and or board member will have due diligence in following up with you concerning your comments. So please know that. Thank you very much for addressing the board. Those were a few more minutes than the 5 we had discussed. I would like to help you know if you're coming to the board with this statement, I'm going to extend that to ensure that we have equal time to that 8 or 9 minutes mark in the interest of fairness with that. We're going to go ahead and extend a little grace about that. So I would like to invite Mr. Jeremy Bitt next to please address the board.
Thank you. Appreciate the potential extra time. I'll try to be succinct. As you know, I'm a parent and citizen of the Bennington School District and also an admin for a Bennington Facebook page advocating for a responsible and transparent school district. I want to go over a couple dates right now. It's been 67 days since the initial open meetings complaint, and we still don't have full transparency and compliance as requested. I would like to thank the board for streaming this meeting on YouTube. I'm hoping that you continue to do so, as it gives the opportunity for those who are unable to attend the meeting to watch and view. We still don't have detailed agendas published online. One should not have to drive down to the district office in this day and age to get a copy of the agenda, and posting a skeleton agenda online is not sufficient either. And we need to ensure that all minutes of the meeting have substance. One should be able to know what happened, what was discussed, if they were not able to attend, especially in the public forum. Provide copies, or at least one copy per the law, of all documents presented at the meeting, and not just the consent agenda. Best practice, I would say, go out there and look at the Bellevue School District. They've got their meeting minutes, their agendas, and they've got attachments of each of the documents discussed online for the public to view. Also, as you mentioned earlier with the Open Meeting Act, it's important that the public forum be within the actual meeting and give the community the ability to comment on and ask questions on agenda items. I'll quote Leslie Donnelly, Assistant Attorney General for the state of Nebraska. A body may not be required to allow citizens to speak at each meeting, but it may not forbid public participation at all meetings. Accordingly, a public body must set aside some time at some of its meetings for members of the public to address it. It seems to us then that public comments must be held during the course of the meeting, not before it. Speaking of dates, it's also been 58 days since the Title IX lawsuit has been filed. The superintendent and the school board were given a large list of Title IX concerns in 2019. The complaints were ineffectively addressed, and now the district is paying the expense of a lawsuit that should have never happened in the first place. It blows my mind that the board doesn't bat an eye when we spend $1 million on the football field or overrun the $600,000 for the district office improvements, or drop $100K plus on a copy room when you already have a copy center. And yet the board and the district have been completely resistant to improvements to the softball fields and to building a press box. Bennington is a great community and could be a great school district, but some of the things really need to be addressed, and as a board, we're looking to you to address those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dick.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Mr. Sass, Mr. Tim Sass. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for your time. I want to thank you all for volunteering your time to be at the school board, but you got the Title IX things going on. And I asked about the live stream, and I'd like to see somebody make a motion that we live stream this from now on every meeting. Because I have an 81-year-old father and a 76-year-old mother that can't come here. And we watched it in February, couldn't watch it in March. And so I asked, it's getting done, so I hope somebody makes a motion, we make this a permanent thing. And you as board members, you know, I think most of you are on the board to make sure the kids get educated. Great. I'm not complaining about the education, but we have the Title IX, and social media is coming up with all these things that are happening, that these raises and all this, and there's statutes that it's against. I'm asking you as a board member, maybe you guys, don't we have an attorney or somebody that we talk to make, you know, do we have to bring this stuff out and vote on it the very first day? Maybe we should call somebody that we're paying and make sure we're doing it legal first. Because I don't know, but right now, our school and the district schools around here, I mean, we're looking at the wrong end of the horse here, boys and girls and women. But I've been here since I was born. I was born in this town. Here, there, all my life. And right now, it's an embarrassment to say that I'm part of the Bennington Public Schools. So I just hope you guys get things under control and get this stuff settled. And let's get back on to educating kids and get going. That's all I ask. Thank you.
I believe it's Tracy Wood. Ms. Tracy Wood. Do I have that first name correct? I hope.
Yes.
Okay, good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I'm switching gears a little bit, and going to talk about the mask mandate. So, my name is Tracy Wood, and I have 3 kids in the district. My oldest son is in the high school, I have a daughter in middle school, and I have one at Pine Creek. We moved to Bennington from Papillion about 5 years ago, and we are so thankful we chose Bennington and absolutely love the district, and I cannot say enough great things about the schools and all of the teachers. That being said, I am not happy about the mask requirements. I feel that this has gone on too long, and we need to stop the requirement before our kids start having more and more emotional effects, not to mention their health issues associated with the mask wearing. I could go on and start citing statistics and percentages. I could talk about suicide rates being higher than ever before. I don't want to just sit here and regurgitate what you can find and read upon on your own free time, which if you haven't, I would suggest you do so. What I want to do is share with you our family's experience with the mask wearing in COVID. First off, my husband is an Omaha firefighter, and so he has been exposed since day one. From March 2020 to when the mask mandate in Douglas County took effect in July, we rarely wore masks, yet continued to work and live life fairly normal. We were both working, we were going into stores that were open, and we continued to engage in activities with family and friends. We did have a trip planned to visit my husband's parents in Santa Fe in July, so we did decide that we were going to, in the beginning of July, start wearing our mask and limiting some contact so that we could ensure we could make the trip to see them. We drove as a family 15 hours to Santa Fe where the mask mandate was already in place. Mind you, this is summer, windows are rolled up, we're all in this car together. We spend most of our time there outdoors, horseback riding, rafting, and had little to no contact with anyone besides his parents. After a week was over, we drove another 15 hours back. Again, windows rolled up. I lost the place here. I'm ready from there. On our way back home, I did start feeling a little ill, and I joked that maybe I had COVID. You know, every time you cough, every time you sneeze, you think you have COVID. Once we got home, I began feeling a little bit worse, and I assumed I just had a sinus infection. Turned out I had COVID. My husband, being a firefighter, had to immediately quarantine as well. He started having some cold symptoms, so he got tested too and was positive. I sat in bed crying, as I was certain I had given this to our 3 children and we were all going to die because that's what the media had told us. We had just spent 30 hours in the car with them. How could they not have gotten it? I waited for them to develop symptoms, and after about a week, I was feeling better. I waited and shocked to realize that my kids never developed one symptom. I assumed that they had gotten it but never developed symptoms, and we just went on. It was also during this time that the mask mandate hit Nebraska and we were forced to wear masks. After having COVID, I was like, all right, we're going to continue wearing masks when we were out, and we were going to limit our time with others and in stores. Since summer was over and the dreaded Nebraska winter lay in front of us, this was also a great excuse to just stay at home and stay warm. Fast forward to 2021. My 15-year-old son was tired, had a day or two with a headache, and one day with a gut ache. He stays up late, he's 15, and he eats food in like 30 seconds. I thought nothing of his so-called symptoms. A couple weeks went by and my 11-year-old was whining of a headache. I tell her to take a Motrin. She refuses, as apparently they don't help with headaches. She is tired and moody. My daughter is always tired and moody and incredibly dramatic. I told her to take some medicine and get over it. During this time, they attended school, church, a running club with masks, but they attended all of these. They were in school the whole time. I never once suspected anything. Another week went by and my youngest started complaining of a headache. Chalk it up to allergies and age. I get a call from my neighbor that her daughter has COVID. A million light bulbs went off in my head. The past month flashed through my brain as I was like, all my kids have and had COVID. We went to get them tested, and as I expected, my youngest was positive, and the other two had antibodies showing that they had had it in the past 2 weeks. All I could think of is we never knew, and they have been living life like normal, attending school, no quarantine, everything normal. I thought, how ironic. They got sick when they wore their masks more diligently than ever before. I share this for a couple of reasons. One, to point out that COVID in children isn't that bad. My kids have been way more sick with influenza, sinus infections, a cold. They've had backaches that were literally worse than when they had COVID. Yes, it could have been worse. So could anything. I have a friend whose daughter had to have brain surgery because of a sinus infection. Everything can be serious, but most likely it won't. We can't stop living because we are afraid of what might happen. Second reason I tell this story is my kids got the virus when they were wearing their masks. Masks are not foolproof, but God knows our kids are fools. They will never wear their masks correctly, and even if they did, these masks do not protect like everyone believes. You read the package, they will tell you they don't. These are not fitted N95 masks. They are cloth ones that our kids wear, put in their pocket, touch, throw on the ground, and then pick it back up and put it on their face. These kids cough and sneeze, not when they're wearing their mask, they take them off. I don't sneeze into my mask, I take it off. When you blow your nose, when you're most likely to spread it, they're removing them anyway. This mandate is pointless, but the negative effects of wearing one could last a lifetime. I beg you to consider removing this mandate for the 2022 school year. For your time.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Wood. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Searcy, Carla Searcy. Welcome.
My name is Carla Searcy. I've lived in Bennington for 18 years, and I have 3 kids, 2 in a district. I have one at Pine Creek, one in the high school, and I have a 3-year-old that will soon be going to Pine Creek, hopefully, going to Pine Creek, hopefully. First, I wanted to just say thank you to Dr. Hawk, the board, and all the staff for keeping our schools open for our kids this year, allowing them to do sports and activities. It's meant the world to us that you guys work so hard to do that, so thank you very much. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional. Anyways, so thank you so much for doing that, and I'm here tonight also to talk about the masks. For some reason, these masks really bother me, and from the research that I've done, have proven to be extremely unhealthy for kids. I know we're following CDC guidelines, and I don't know if that's a requirement or if that's just something that we have chosen to do to keep kids safe. But I feel like there's been enough time now that we know more about this. The kids are not being severely affected by this. They're not passing it like we thought in the beginning. I'm sure you guys have taken much of what I'm going to talk about into consideration, but from what I understand, no decision has been made for next school year. And so I just want to put my opinion out there for next school year. It would be great if we could get rid of them now, but I'm pretty sure that ship has sailed at this point. So I just want to put it out there what my opinion is and let you know that there are parents that do not agree with these masks. If masks are still being required next year, I'm not going to send my kids back to Bennington. I will find an alternative method to educate them. In recent studies, a big study that was released earlier this month involving 25,000 school-age children showed that masks are harming them physically, psychologically, and behaviorally. We've all heard the stories of suicide and depression and all of those things. They're also having physical symptoms from these masks. Masking kids all day has not been studied for safety. In fact, there have been studies done in the past prior to the pandemic to prove the masks do not block viruses and should not be worn. The CDC, Dr. Fauci, and the US Surgeon General last year in February actually said that cloth or surgical masks do not block viruses. Do not wear them. They came out and made that very public. Then they flip-flopped. CDC has said that masks do not block smoke particles. We all know that virus particles are much, much smaller than what a smoke particle is. So these masks are not working. They're not working. Researchers from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease did a study in 2008 that concluded that most of the deaths from the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, where they were masked, were not caused from the flu virus. They were actually caused from bacterial pneumonia caused by wearing masks. The masks trap that bacteria and germs from your nose and mouth that would normally be expelled into the air. It's trapping them in that mask, and it's forcing the bacteria back down into our lungs. Prolonged exposure to this can destroy your bronchial tubes and your lungs, which will result in death or major damage. Since we're taking so much of medical advice from Dr. Fauci, he is a part of that study as well. It's hard to find on the internet now. It used to be on the NIH website, and it's not any longer. They've taken it down, but I did find it last February when I started my research. It says right on the package, and I know Tracy spoke of this too, on all surgical masks and even the fashion masks that the district handed out to our kids at the beginning of the year, that they were not intended to block a virus and they would not block a virus. So they're not working. We know they're not working. And to have our kids sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day with this mask on, they touch their face constantly. The germs are just sitting on their face. Common sense tells you this is not what is best for our kids. Many practicing medical doctors that have treating active COVID cases and having great success, some even locally, have spoken out on the dangers that masks are causing our kids. Kids' brains are still developing and they're suffering from oxygen supply. Kids touch their masks all day, they leave germs and bacteria behind. Kids are getting mask mouth. More dentists are talking about kids coming in with cavities and bacterial infections in their mouths because of wearing this mask all day. They're having focusing problems. Kids are more tired, some are dizzy. Small kids rely on social referencing to learn, and if their caregiver or teacher's half their faces are covered, how are they going to get those facial expressions and those cues to learn? They learn how to communicate, speak, and even read by doing that, and our young kids aren't learning those things. And not to even mention like the hard of hearing and autistic children that are just really struggling with everybody having their faces covered. We're perpetuating and breeding fear in our kids, and it's going to have long-term effects. Most kids are not affected by this, and healthy adults are not either. 99.7% will survive this. That's lower than dying of the flu, getting struck by lightning, or dying in a car accident. And we're making our kids wear masks for 8 hours a day because of that. Texas and Florida dropped all their mandates, and since their numbers have plummeted. So if the masks worked, their numbers would have already dropped when they were all required to wear masks. All of our kids are hanging out together. They're having sleepovers. They're doing all the normal life stuff outside of school without masks. And we're not dropping like flies. No one is dying. There are many proven and effective treatments for someone that gets COVID now. There's the vaccine. So if staff, teachers are concerned about this, if parents are concerned for their children, they have outlets that they can get the vaccine, they can have treatment, they can socially distance and stay home and remote learn if they would like to, and they also have the right to wear the masks if they want to. We should have the right to not have our children masked if we don't feel that's the healthiest thing for our kids. I'm just asking you to please take this to heart. It means a lot to a lot of different parents that I've spoken to. Our job as parents and educators is to look out for the best interest of the children, and I don't believe this is in the best interest of our children. Someone needs to be the leader in this issue. Some district needs to stand up and say, we're not going to mask our kids anymore, and I would love to see Bennington be able to stand up and do that and lead the way, because I think most of us know that this is not the answer. Masking our kids outside and during physical activity is absolutely ludicrous. If I would have sent a mask with my kids to school 2 years ago and said, I need them to wear this all the time, and when they go outside in the fresh air, please make sure they're wearing it. And whenever they're doing physical activity in gym class, make sure they're wearing this. You guys probably would have called CPS on me for negligent behavior around a kid, not taking care of the kid. It's crazy behavior. They're not getting enough oxygen. So I thank you guys so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Tracy. I believe that's all I have currently to address the board. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Thank you, Dr. Gertz. Welcome.
Thank you for the welcome. I am Heather Gertz, and I come to you as a citizen and taxpayer, which is why I wanted to stay on this side of the table for the public forum. I'd like to start off with a story, and this is directed to you, board members. There's a story of blind men and an elephant. It's an old one, you've heard it before. Each blind man feels a different part of the elephant's body. Then they describe the elephant based on their experience and the descriptions they each have. Some feel the trunk and think it's a tree. Some feel the ear and think it's a fan. Some feel the body and think it's a wall. And the moral of the story is that humans have a tendency to claim absolute truth based on their limited experience, and they ignore other people's limited experience, which may be equally true. Perception is reality when one doesn't know the truth. We all have it, our own truth and our own perception. There are protocols, procedures, policies, practices, preferences, and perspectives of which organizations and teams work hard to collaborate, communicate, comprehend, create, and construct. I would say we are under construction in many ways. Small town growing pains indeed. Once a farm community that made deals on handshakes. Now, so much more. We must ask ourselves where our perception is. Are we intentional, historical, visionary, imaginative, logistical, critical, evaluative, hopeful? I personally believe in the cliche, see something, say something. By not saying something, one says something. And personally, as a parent, a patron, and community advocate who first entered Bennington Public Schools when we were a building from kindergarten through 12th grade on this site, I acknowledge that I too can't deny and must claim joyfully that I serve as a member of the Bennington Board of Education. The growing pains that we face are results of such a systematic process that slowly and steadfastly paves the way for the future of Bennington Public Schools, students, educators, staff, administrators, patrons, and community for generations to come. And while I admit that I cannot put my finger on it exactly, I sense that there's a certain element of misdirected community advocacy going on here. I understand that the board members are receiving individual emails, some posing threats and misinformed information. I understand that there's a social media platform that was developed to specifically target the Bennington community in regards to the Board of Education, yet board members were not invited. I understand that while this is an expectation and right of the Bennington patrons and public service, perceived bullying and tabloid communication is unhealthy, unproductive, and unnecessary for all of us. Please hear this. We need and value community engagement. I recall that some years ago, community members approached the school board with requests for a program improvement. Then last year, we were able to pass a bond issue with community support for such programs. Yet we all know that good news takes time. The Nebraska Association of School Boards describes effective community engagement as addressing legitimate public issues and growing the capacity of a democratic community to work collectively and collaboratively to meet the public good. Ultimately, this process is about enhancing student learning and achievement, which is what we all strive for by serving public education. While there is much that I cannot say at this time, I would like to thank you, each one of you as board members, parents, and patrons, for trusting the process, communicating with the people, and being a policy-based school board that supports purposeful conversation and respectful community engagement that embodies a framework within public education. Thank you for putting in countless hours a month of meetings, responding to calls, and serving as the board that truly governs by policy, remaining focused on policy at all times. This means that every issue that arises is examined as a policy matter rather than an isolated problem for the board to solve. When a decision by the superintendent or staff is challenged, the board first asks itself, did the decision or action reflect a reasonable interpretation of our policy? Let us be encouraged to keep focused on the business at hand, to provide educational opportunities in a safe and caring environment that will prepare all students to meet the challenges of the future. Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. I think that's all that I have in terms of forms and folks who would like to address the board this evening. Is there anyone else from our community who would like to address the board? Give you one more moment. Okay, seeing none, this meeting is called to order at 6:37. We do begin our business with a consent agenda, which includes approval of the current night's agenda, as well as approval of minutes from our regular board meeting, and we also did host a special board meeting.
Valerie, if you don't mind me interrupting, I'm sorry, just hearing what Heather just said totally makes me have to make a decision here on seeing something and saying something. I think it's absolutely a great comment, and I apologize. I so move that the public comment be moved within the Board of Education meetings.
Thank you. We do have a report on our agenda this evening from Policy Committee and the approach about that. And I'm candidly unsure about the point of order because we are in consent agenda and that would not qualify under consent agenda, but I appreciate you making that known. So I think we would have to table that and appreciate that. We'll address that concerning our policy upcoming meetings, which I can give a report out for the board around that. Thank you, Tim. We have a potential motion before the board concerning our consent agenda. And who had bills this evening?
Yes, that was Allison and I. Kara and I had bills this month to review, so every month the treasurer always reviews the bills, and then we have one other rotating board member for control purposes. I would mention that we had a $300,000 spend for the Chromebooks, and that's our maintenance where we have a certain number of Chromebooks that are provided at certain grade levels after so many years. So that was a bigger expense. Otherwise, there really wasn't anything unusual this month in terms of bills that I reviewed. Kara, did you have anything else on that? It was pretty standard, I think.
It was pretty standard, and I'll make a motions to approve the consent agenda items.
Thank you. Kara has moved to approve the consent agenda items as listed. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Motion by Kara, a second by Mark. Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes. We do move now to our reports, and we begin with administrator reports. We typically begin with our elementary leaders. Who is sharing with us? Hello,
That's
Ms.
me.
Evangelisti, welcome.
Hi, Allison Evangelisti, Principal at Pine Creek. We have updated our enrollment numbers. You can see our kindergartens are looking for a healthy turnout next year. We'll be presenting, each school will be presenting their own virtual kindergarten parent night here at the end of April. We will do an in-person roundup of sorts at the beginning of August where we can see our students in short 2-hour settings before the school year begins. We also had Staff Appreciation Week these past weeks before spring break. All of us had different themes, but all of us felt incredibly appreciated and uplifted by the words of the community, by the notes from our students, and by surprise lunches, gifts, and snacks that came through. And we are beginning our NSCAS testing this week. So we'll have our 3rd through 5th graders start NSCAS reading this week, and we'll do NSCAS math next week. Science was completed by our 5th graders earlier in March, and we hope to use those scores to make programming and teaching decisions moving forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Evangelisti. I do just have one quick one. This is the first time for NSCAS since 2019, is that correct? Well, we wish you very best as even your educators get back into that rhythm. I know that's a lot for you all, so thank you for that. Are there any other questions from Ms. Evangelisti concerning the elementary report? Yeah, the middle school report. Mr. Hoppus, are you sharing that with us today?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Sean Hoppus, middle school principal. Just a couple highlights. We're also in the heart of testing season, as you can see. We did our ELA test before spring break. That went very well. Very proud of our kids. They gave good effort on that. This week we have our 8th grade science test, and then next week is math. We're going to squeeze our end of the year math test in as well. So our kids have been hit with a lot of testing here, which kind of transitions me into the third one. Our PTO has been great this year, trying to come up with different ways to, we haven't had school dances and those types of things. So we're going to try something called Band Bingo. We'll see how that goes for kind of a celebration of testing at that point. So we're hoping that goes well. And then just one more highlight. We have about 180 kids out for track, 7th and 8th grade, which is incredible number. We had our first meet tonight. The girls were here against Gretna and Elkhorn Valley View. That went very well, and our boys compete tomorrow against the same schools. So it's really exciting to see those kind of numbers out for track and kids competing. So those are my highlights. Any questions from the board?
Is that about a quarter of your total population? Or
It is, well, 7th and 8th grade, we have about 620-ish kids, and that's for about a third one,
Well,
So,
biased mom of the track and field girl, so I'm delighted to know
bless
that.
the coaches, they've done a very good job.
Yes, I think that for sure. Any other questions from the board for Mr. Hoppus concerning the middle school report? High school report, Dr. Clemens, here to share that with us?
Yes.
Hello, how are
Yes.
you? Welcome.
Just 2 dates I wanted to share with you that are in the board report. We do have our foundation awards ceremony this Sunday at the high school auditorium at 2 p.m. Something that's taken place for quite a few years at the high school. Obviously last year with COVID that couldn't happen. And so we're excited to have that back at the auditorium here next Sunday. And then the following Sunday, we have our National Honor Society induction. We had 33 students apply this year. 10 were selected, taking our total number at Bennington High School to 41 students. And we will have an induction ceremony on the 25th. One thing that we did want to do, because last year's students that were selected did not get to participate in an induction ceremony, we're inviting them and their families back on on the 25th to be able to be part of this induction as well. So they do get to go through that ceremony because they were not able to do so last year.
I do have one question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot regarding the data, but curious about the number of applicants for Honor Society, so 33. Is that typical? Is it growing each year? Help me understand that, and what are and is 10 sort of a...
Sure. So 41 puts us at about 5% of our student body that are in National Honor Society. That fluctuates a little bit from year to year. But it's within the scope that we've had since I've been the principal at Bennington. The number of applicants has grown a little bit every year, but we've grown in size every year as well. So our volume of applicants are coming in are more, but our percentages of the number of people that are applying relative to our student body population is, again, not significantly different.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Dr. Blumenkamp concerning the secondary work?
I have a comment. Mr. Hoppus said it about track and the incredible numbers, and Dr. B took me to high school, and I just want to say thank you for all of the people that were involved in getting the unified track team started in high school. I think that's wonderful.
Sure, I think Mrs. Fagan's going to talk about that in a minute, but
Oh, sorry.
it's been a good
you-
start.
You're right, so exciting.
Yeah.
That's a good preview, but any
We
other
arm
questions?
wrestled on who was going to try to
Yeah.
talk about it tonight.
I wanted to have
I
this
lost.
stuff. Yes, so March was actually Developmental Disability Awareness Month, and our Circle of Badgers Club got to get back together again. We haven't got to meet as many times as typical, but that's because of COVID, and we do have some medically fragile kiddos that are part of that group, so we've been kind of a little more sensitive about how often we meet. So they did a great thing, which was very timely because it led right into our first track meet for Unified Track. We have 8 unified athletes this year. The track coaches have been doing a great job trying to kind of learn this new world. We are only the 2nd team in our district to have a unified track team, and we have a very large one in comparison to the other one. So hopefully as we grow, we can just keep improving and be a leader for other school districts to see how great it can be to have these unified teams and how it brings everybody together. So that's it. Oh, and their last track meet is next Tuesday, so if anybody wants to be really happy, you should go out next Tuesday.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Mr. Fagan? I believe next, show curriculum instruction report from Dr. Hoagie.
Very good, thank you. I'd like to highlight new courses. The high school has gone through registration process this year, and with that, the board had approved 2 new elective science courses, as science has done their work for a full year of evaluating their process, evaluating the new standards, and updating coursework. So 2 new electives were added this year. One is astronomy and the second is forensic science. We had outstanding registration numbers for that, and so we're very excited to be offering multiple sections of that for next fall for the students. So students seem to really appreciate that, and the teachers appreciate the board's approval of that. The second thing I'd like to highlight is our school improvement process. We are in the heart of the spring when we do our survey process. We're 1 year out of having our team visit the district, and they will be people from inside the state and outside the state to give us their review. Part of that process is surveys, which we have out at the current time for middle school families. Students, teachers, and parents are responding to those surveys. We have finished the elementary surveys, and then toward the latter half of April, we will do the high school surveys. So as part of our review, I'll bring that data back to the buildings to review this spring, and when the board has their retreat in June, we'll review our school improvement process and look at that feedback as well. So those are the 2 highlights I have for you this evening. Any questions I can answer for you?
Dr. Hoagie, anything from the board?
Thank you.
Dr. Hawk?
Yes, Thank you very much, Board, for allowing me a little bit of tardiness to attend to a family event. We are making progress on addressing equity for all students. As you can see, the progress is slow, but certain measures must be met on the legal process to accommodate that. We also had youth soccer to utilize our facilities here in the last weekend. Over 80 teams were in the community over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I think all was done without injury, without concern. And we invite those back to be a part of our community as we move forward. Those are some of the highlights I have for you this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. Are there any questions from the board for Dr. Hawk concerning the superintendent's notes for the month? Thank you, administrators. Appreciate always your report outs and good updates. We'll move now on our agenda to committee reports. We did have a couple of our committees. All of them are very busy, and a couple of them met. We can start with the curriculum committee. Kara, I don't know if you want to take a good gander at some of our highlights. We do have an item on the agenda, board members, fellow leaders concerning some of this, but would love to highlight a few things.
Yes,
it's
just interesting. I find interesting, when I first came on this board, we were trying to fill elementary school, and then it came to the middle school, and now you can see where we are, that all that rush of kids is getting to the high school. So a lot of these proposals are going to the high school because we have a lot of kids that will be coming into the high school. There was also an interesting one that we wanted to address, and it kind of fits in, I think, on the girls in sports theme here. We have wrestling, and we have added a coach there because we do expect some girls in the wrestling, and we need a coach to actually help and go to those wrestling meets, which will, some of them, from what I understand, will be separate from the boys. So we do have that in place. If we don't have anyone go out, we'll pull that back because our ratio looks good otherwise, but we want to make sure that we have someone there to go to those additional meets. So you can see the list. I don't need to read it. Any other highlights you can think of, Valerie, that I'm not covering?
No, that was good. Thank you so much. We this was our third meeting, and so this is our third round of potential additional curriculum and obviously personnel proposals for the board to consider. So we are making our way through diligently, leaders, that notebook of proposals, which is generated by our administrators, as you know, and our educators. I love that very grassroots contribution to the board. So we are making our way through those proposals. I would estimate probably one more meeting for us to make some final decisions concerning those proposals, which were presented to you all back in November when we had our special meeting. So really appreciate the educators who take a great deal of time to communicate their needs to the board, and we're getting close about that. We are not sort of overspent on the allocated variable budget that goes to this piece, but we need to be mindful of our opening 2 additional facilities here in the not too distant future. So we're keeping that in mind. So those are our highlights from the curriculum and Americanism committee. Are there any questions for us from the board concerning any of those? And once again, we of course do have the potential proposal motion before the board later on in our agenda. I might go ahead and just pick up, I don't have a report for you on policy committee, but a quick update for the board. As mentioned, we have approved some consultation from the Nebraska Association of School Boards. We have established our cadence of review of our policies, which is also to Mr. Dreesen's important point, and that of many patrons who have been reaching out to us concerning some of those issues. So that cadence of meetings has been scheduled. I think the policy committee in advance, which will consist of the officers of the board, but we will make sure that the full board has reading opportunity of any of those policies, which really led right alongside that is review of practice leaders. So please understand that while we're visiting policy, and I even say this with respect to our administrators, you know, the challenge is always translating that into right practice. So all of those pieces will be part of our conversation as we audit those. We'll be beginning with the first 100, 200, 300 series policies. I don't believe that's been done, at least not in my tenure, so more than a decade. And some of the practices even that have been in place are a couple of decades probably in the works. So those are things that we will be considering right alongside. And our first meeting is upcoming in May. We will meet throughout the rest of the year, reviewing about 3 different series at a time. So as we had shared previously, it's going to take us kind of that amount of time to get through those, and we'll bring that to the board toward the end of the year, probably by fall. But if there is anything that we need to pivot more quickly, of course, we'll make sure that we do our 2 readings of policies, and we'll put that on prior. So it isn't as if we won't review policy necessarily, but hope to bring that as a big project for us later in the year. So I think that's it. Anything else on that?
Who's on the policy committee?
It is Allison, Mark, and myself.
Okay, got it.
And if you have any questions, leaders, or even input prior to that, 100, 200, 300 series, which concerns operations of the board as well, are in that review. So if you do have anything you would like us to take special note of course, reach out to me, or to Margaret or Allison. We'll make sure to pay special close attention to those that you are wondering about.
And the person that's helping us do that, what
Is Mr. Luby. He has been in many, I'm probably not exaggerating when I say at least a couple decades or more in policy work around education. He has quite extensive work around this and partnered with districts, and I believe he may have even partnered with us in the last time that the district engaged in this work, so if I'm not mistaken. And he is with the Nebraska Association of School Boards.
Thank you.
And I will know we did discuss updating policies periodically throughout the year and whether that makes sense. I know people are wanting us to move faster, and his recommendation was not to do that because some policies affect other policies. So when you fix one and then you try to make that change in the middle of the year, it could impact other work down the road and actually causes more work. So we're gonna do them in chunks as our meetings, but we're gonna actually formally vote on them at one time at the end of the year, was his recommendation.
I so appreciate you saying that, because I really appreciate that. Policy lives in sort of an ecosystem. They don't live in isolation from each other. So that means it impacts, as Allison described, other things. So we want to be really deliberate about that work. So, good. Thank you. Good question. Anything else that you're wondering about? Looking at also, relatedly, some training for the board, which I mentioned to, I think, each of you individually. Summertime is probably going to be our best bet about that, and we could probably have on that agenda some of this piece around policy review and what that looks like, and practices that are of particular interest to the board, and we will invite some external consult around that too, but more about that.
That would be great.
Thank you. You bet. I think that's it from policy. Yeah, any other questions? Good. And building and finance also met. You all have some important things to share with us today, I know. So.
We did. I have a few summary items. Probably spent the bulk of our time discussing the high school support area bids. I won't cover that in detail here because we've got a presentation and decision to make in new business this evening. So wait till then to discuss further. But a couple other things to highlight. There was a bid out for the district office renovation or the completion of the second phase of that. We've elected to suspend that process. It's pretty apparent that there are some supply chain disruptions that are driving prices in construction materials. And particularly with summer construction season being a busy one, certain construction labor, particularly electricians, are hard to come by. And so we think we maybe have a better opportunity for a positive bidding process to wait into the fall and make that a winter project since it's indoors. Really don't have that luxury on the high school support areas because they are outdoor projects and we do need to proceed with those. But it seems sensible that we defer that until the fall. So the other thing we discussed, which was an exciting proposal from the Booster Club regarding a video scoreboard for the high school, We met preliminarily as a committee to kind of review some information from the proposal. I think we have more questions, and so are looking to meet with Booster Club and the Video Scoreboard Company for a presentation to get those questions answered. I think one of the suggestions is that paying for the scoreboard would happen through advertising or sponsorships. We do not have a policy on advertising on district-owned assets. And so in addition to kind of the budget and financing considerations, we also have a policy matter to discuss on advertising for district on district assets as well. And the opportunity also comes with potentially a curriculum for a video class or content for a class that we need to gather more information on and review as part of our curriculum review process too. So a lot of questions. We're looking to move that process forward. Next steps to meet with the Booster Club and get more information. So Allison or Tim, anything to?
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I would love to get in front of the Booster Club and Daktronics, who is the school board company, at least ask some questions, simply put, and hopefully we can get something working for them.
And it looked like they were under some kind of timeline or deadline. Will we be able to meet that?
Yeah, I mean, they talked about it, but there was no major specific thing. I mean, we have a lot of questions we have to ask yet. We got to clarify. We can't put the district in any kind of jeopardy on that. So we'll get some questions asked, and hopefully we can help them move along with you guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Building and Finance Committee, appreciate that. And we do have a construction update. Who is sharing that with us today?
But, thank you very much. I'll let Mr. Bird give us an update on the 3 projects that are underway right now.
Well, Ms. Burns.
Good evening. Going through the construction update, 3 projects. Of course, we have the middle school, the elementary school addition at Pine Creek, and then the new elementary school number 5. All of which are on schedule. They're moving forward with current installation. The middle school and the elementary school number 5 are pretty much right next to each other, trying to get out of the mud. The rain hasn't helped, and then it would dry out, and then it rained again. But we have masonry block going up, underground utilities going in, and mechanical electrical rough ends installed. So, a few pictures you can kind of see, but as at Pine Creek, the installation, we're coming down to the end of that. Brick is going up on the outside of the building, on the addition. Casework installed, finishes are going in. Elementary school and middle school are a little bit wet, so.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Any questions from the board concerning these ongoing construction projects? Okay. It looks like we have our annual nutrition services report for us this evening. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Well, thank you for letting me come here tonight and share a little bit about our nutrition services program. If you don't know, I am new to Bennington. This is my first school year here. I started on July 1st. We've got some new and exciting things, and we'll just go through them.
Excuse me. Let's give you a microphone.
Would you like for me to sit, or?
No, here you go. No karaoke, please.
No worries there.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, fantastic. So again, when I started in July, I kind of wanted to focus on a couple things. Number one, I wanted to make sure we were serving delicious meals to all of our students.
And at the same time, making sure that they're nutritious and following the USDA guidelines. We want to make sure that, when the students are coming down, that we're serving the students in a friendly atmosphere. And most importantly, that what we're doing is supporting the education, supporting the students so that they're able to learn during the school day. So again, Bennington Public Schools participates in the following child nutrition programs. In a normal, typical school year, we participate in the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program. But due to COVID this year, and what we had were like 15 USDA summer food service waivers, we were allowed to follow that summer food service program and offer free meals to all the students here in Bennington schools. And so that included a free breakfast and a free lunch. And again, we met all those regulations for that summer food service program. And our nutrition service staff, we have very hardworking, dedicated 30 individuals. Each school is kind of contains different number of staff depending on how many meals they're serving at that location. We prepare all the meals and serve all the meals on site. Each school is staffed with a head cook, and then depending on how many staff or meals we serve, there will be one 6.5-hour cook or 2 6.5-hour cooks, and then 4-hour cooks, again, according to how many meals are being served at that site. And then, of course, I did not list myself on this slide, but I, of course, am the coordinator, and then we also have I guess she's kind of a receptionist and then slash food service. She helps with many of the free and reduced applications, and then maintaining the data in our point of sale program. For training, this year I'm excited to let you guys know that we have all of our head cooks are Serve Safe certified. And what that is a certified training that covers food safety and sanitation regulations. So again, that's the first year that we've had all of our head cooks have that certification. And then in addition, we have required professional training, and it depends on the job title that you have will determine how many hours of training that you need. As the director, I have been required to have 12 hours of training. Head cooks would be considered managers, and they are required to have 10 hours. And then any part-time employees that work over 20 hours a week need to have 6 hours of training. And then if you have work under 20 hours a week, you would need 4 hours of training. So the way that we accommodate this professional standards is we use Safe Schools, which is our online format for all of our training. And then also I meet with the head cooks once a month, and we work on training and different types of educational opportunities at that time. This is basically kind of recaps this year's reimbursement rates. Again, we thought we were starting the year out with the National School Lunch Program and then transitioned to the Summer Food Service Program. But when you look at the reimbursement rates, you'll see that the breakfast and lunch reimbursement on the Summer Food Service Program is a little bit higher. It's $2.46 for a breakfast and $4.31 for lunch. And again, the Summer Food Service Program allowed us to offer free meals to the students and then receive the reimbursement that you see on the screen. Also, from the government, we receive our commodities. And commodities are based on the number of meals that we served the previous year. So for the 2021 school year, we received a total entitlement of $114,856. We allocated $75,000 of that towards a fresh fruit and vegetable program that's operated through the Department of Defense. The remaining $39,856 we receive in monthly deliveries. They're USDA commodity foods that come to us on a monthly basis. And those foods can contain canned fruits or frozen proteins, things like that. Now, since we did not participate in the National School Lunch Program, they are telling us that next year our entitlement dollars will be based on 1920. So it'll probably be very similar to what it was this year. Just some information for statistics by each school. The free and reduced percentages are, I don't know if you can see all of them, I don't know. Some of them might have gotten cut off there, but district-wide, as a free and reduced percentage, we are a little bit over 11.5%. So the Heritage Elementary, you can see, is close to 16%, but the other ones are most likely under 10%. Our average daily participation it's averaging about kind of lunch, that it isn't lining up, is it, Mr. Dr. Hop? Anchor point, where it says 36%, that is the breakfast participation. Lunch is averaging about 65%. Okay. Let me go to the next page and then I'll kind of. So as you can see, our breakfast has increased considerably, and most likely it's because of the free meals that we're offering this year. In 2019-20, we served 58,000 breakfast, but as of March 31st of this school year, we've already served 115,000 breakfast. So it's more than doubled. Lunch, we served on 19-20, we served 262,000, and as of March 31st, we've already served 273,000. And you know, part of that is because we do have more students. You know, each year I think the student population is growing, but it also I think has a lot to do with the delicious, nutritious meals we're serving. And someone's laughing at me. Those great meals we're serving, and because the meals have been free this year. Did I do something wrong? Did you lose power?
No.
Thank you. For next school year, for that 2020-21-22 school year, we're proposing a nickel increase across the board. We will decide what the adult meals will be this summer when they release the next year's reimbursement rates. Okay. Procurement, these are the bids that we have for our nutrition services program. We have a bid with Highland Dairy Foods, and they provide all of our dairy and milk products. We'll be renewing that bid for the 21-22 school year. This year we have a contract with Fiscal Lincoln, and it's through the ESU3 cooperative buying. And then we have a Rotella's bid as well, and they provide all of our fresh baked bread. For next year, we have written a RFP for a primary vendor, and so we will not be renewing, I did it again, we will not be renewing the Fiscal contract, but we are including them, and they have the opportunity to submit proposals for the prime vendor contract. Take this off just for a second. So for this year in review, what we've done this year is we, when I first came on board, we had a return to learn plan, and we right from the start we had to make a lot of changes. We made adjustments to our menus. We made adjustments to our procedures, our cleaning procedures. We made adjustments to schedules because principals were forced to change some of their lunch schedules. And then also we made adjustments to how we serve the food. things had to be wrapped, things had to be portioned, and we couldn't allow any self-service of the students, especially those high school students. Again, we implemented that summer food service program. We also are providing remote learning meals at Bennington Elementary. Implemented fresh fruits and vegetables program. So every day we're serving fresh fruits and vegetables on the menus. We introduced online ordering for all the head cooks. So they're able to go onto the website and place their own orders. Breakfast and lunch participation increased. We tried some new recipes and cycle menus. Working on inventory control and decreasing food waste. That's where the cycle menus come in, because you can use your unused frozen product on the next time it comes up down the menu. And we celebrated National School Breakfast Week. We had some fun menu items and some giveaways that the students really enjoyed. And we're working on creating staff workflow assignment schedules for the kitchens. These are some of the USDA updates that we've been working with over the last year. Number one is we're able to serve low-fat flavored milk. Number two, we're able to offer half of our grains as non-whole grain. So 50% has to be whole grain, and then the other 50 can be just from enriched flour. And then we're retaining a sodium target 1 through the end of the school year 23-24. So that's kind of good that we don't have to keep reducing the sodium content of our meals. So what does the future hold for nutrition services? We're working to develop a webpage for the nutrition services on the district website. We're hoping to introduce a new online menus with nutrition information on the menus. We're working on a new production records ordering and inventory system. We may be possibly able to serve meals to the summer school students. That's something that is just in the beginning stages of just discussing. Working on developing a climate assessment survey for all of the nutrition services employees. Would still like to continue to increase our breakfast and lunch participation, and well, first of all, maintain, but would also like it to keep growing. Next year, we'll be looking at some alternative meal service options at the high school for the following school year. And then also next year, we'll be looking at proposing staffing for the new elementary and the new middle school. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. Any questions from the board? I did have just one. The nickel increase, is that thought for both breakfast and the lunch meal? Is that what we're looking at? Okay.
Yes. And then also our milk. So the milk would go from 45 cents to 50 cents.
For each of those items categorically. Really good. And then, can you please pronounce your last name for me?
It's Watsaba.
I just want to guess. A very smart lady told me you should just ask. That was my mom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So thank you, Ms. Watsaba. We appreciate your report. Any other questions from the board?
Not a question, but just a note of thanks in a challenging year, especially a new one where you're starting, but to the whole staff, I applaud their efforts for a successful summer and year in supporting our students. But at least I know for me, what goes in here really affects what happens up here. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In this case, there is such a thing as a free lunch.
You know, thank you for saying that, actually. My question was just confirming that federal support around that is through the end of this 2020-2021 school year.
Yes,
Correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So when we start school next fall, we'll be operating under what I would consider typical or normal operations under the National School Lunch Program.
Thank you. I thought it was just important to be explicit about that, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good. All right, very good. I don't believe we have a full report from our lobbyists, but are there any updates, Dr. Hoff, that you have for us around that? And are you going to tell me I skipped something?
No,
Very
we do not have an update.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a spotlight report. We are delighted to have our physical education experts for K-12 here to share their spotlight report. Welcome.
Thanks for having us. It'll be fine. Do you want me to go mic?
I'm thinking.
I can use my gym voice. We are here by committee. I'm myself, Brandon Mimick. I'm at the high school. Nick Lau is middle school. Bart Miller right now is elementary heritage. And then Blaze Glincy is also at the middle school. Working with PE staff there. So, Rob, is this the best spot for me to stand? Or you?
Either one side, not right in the middle. You're okay.
Okay.
I can go past you.
Actually, back up. So the picture in the background right now, and I'll touch on it later, but I think COVID has really forced us to utilize more efficiently our areas in the building, outside of the building. Our dynamic room upstairs before, we used it, but not near as much as we have this summer and now. And I think it's really enhanced what we do as a PE department in the high school. So that's one of the classes getting work done up there. Do our best to stay distance and stay safe. So again, who's here? I've already announced them, so kind of the cat out of the bag there. Who's not? Maggie Whitholm from Anchor Point, Ryan Johannick from Bennington Elementary, Teresa Richling from Pine Creek, Justin Horner, he also teaches there. He's also at the high school with us teaching health. Victoria Schaub is coaching soccer right now. And then at the high school, Jocelyn Sewing coaching track right now. And then we're blessed to have Chris Grinvald help us out with the class. So it is, since I got here to now, the staff is getting bigger, but again, with the growth of the numbers, we're fortunate we're able to have that staffing for our PE department. With that, I'm going to pass it to Mr. Lau.
All right, they obviously put me first, so anyway. Okay, so K-12 health education. We have 6 to 8 at the middle school where I am, and then we have 9th grade offering at the high school, where kind of how this looks. We do utilize national standards for our standards. Early March, they rolled out with some new health education standards for Nebraska public schools. And I'll kind of touch on that here in just a little bit. But we do adopt the national health education standards for what we use. Ooh, missing a slide. I think we're good. These are the topics that we currently cover within our health education for grades 6 through 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. It looks like a lot to cover, so kind of how our topics break up. In 6th through 8th grade, we have 6 week courses or hexters, and each grade level gets 1 hexter each year of health. In high school, as freshmen, they get a semester of health, and we split these courses up, these topics up per grade level, and everything is adjusted to the age level and the grade level in terms of understanding. Some major shifts, okay, last year they came out, a consortium affiliated with the Department of Education came out with some new health education proposed standards. And the major shift in this was the human growth and development element, with a heavy emphasis that they were looking to place on current societal norms and beliefs at all grade levels. And then the 8 major strands, they were going to dive into a little bit more, put a little bit more emphasis into each of these topics. Okay, through the national standards, we're still hitting on these 8 strands, just not at the depth of the human growth and development level. And then, let's see, early March when these were rolled out to the school district, right? This element was not in here until March 19th. This came out on the Department of Education website. So you are required as a school district to have health education standards, okay? You're not required as a school district to adopt the Nebraska education standards, you can use the national education standards like we do currently. So, sorry. So that is kind of what this is meaning by this. So we can choose to adopt the new standards that they're proposing, or we can stick with the current status of using the national education, our national health education standards. And per Dr. Haas' Friday notes from March 19th, he did send out a copy of the standards. So all the families should be getting those, should have gotten those in those Friday notes, along with a survey link looking for public feedback. So I'd encourage everybody to make sure, maybe go back through your emails, look at the proposed standards. It's fairly lengthy, only 60 pages, so it's good reading. And then go through and you can provide feedback based off the grade level that interests you or affects you the most. All right?
Okay, I'm Mark Miller, and I am the PE teacher over at Heritage Elementary. And I just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of what exactly it is we do in elementary PE, and just kind of give you a breakdown of how this year's been. Some of the pictures here are courtesy of Pine Creek at the parachute down the corner, which is a classic favorite. No matter what grade you got, the energy level goes crazy in the gym when you get off that parachute. So always a good time. Kind of how it works. Each elementary is on the same 5-day cycle, and what that means for us PE-wise is we will see each class or section twice during that 5-day cycle for 30 minutes each. We really do a wide range of activities. This is just a very broad overview, this list here, but it kind of gives you just at least a small sample of what we might go over over the course of a school year. We each go over the same pacing guide, and really what that is it's something we created. It's our curriculum, our foundation, and it aligns with the national standards, and just kind of gives us an age-appropriate activities and skill development that we'll cover. For example, each kindergarten and 5th grade are both going to have a soccer unit, but those units will look quite a bit different. They'll be age appropriate, and kind of the idea is that we'll progress them into where we want them. So we do everything from the non-traditional things like the capture the flag and the parachute to the more traditional sports like basketball and soccer. So we got a pretty wide range of activities. We have a lot of fun. Obviously this year, just like everybody else, we were impacted quite a bit with COVID. I think the most daunting of those was our lack of space that we were going to be having, and that's just the way it is. And as you can see in the pictures, this is Heritage, but it would be very similar at the other elementaries where half of the gym is now a cafeteria, and half of it is used for gym space. Which we have honestly, we're really blessed with big gyms. So it's still a really good amount of space to use. It's just a little different. We have a padded wall there, and the only thing we did think about was there'd be kids eating lunch during PE, which was at first was kind of crazy, but everyone's adapted pretty well. The amount of sanitizing we do is, especially at the beginning of the year, was crazy. We weren't using a lot of equipment, and when we did, we were wiping everything down like crazy, and kids were sanitizing their hands in and out. We've been able to draw back on some of that. Now we kind of just do it in between classes. So that's been nice to get the equipment back out and just kind of keep everyone safe, washing it down. The other thing was that we also got outside quite a bit more, just out of space issues. So that was kind of fun at the beginning of the year. Getting nice weather again. So at the beginning of the year, we saw all these challenges we were going to face, and we just kind of had to sit down. And honestly, it was probably the most collaboration we've ever had. We just had to really put our minds together and come up with, be creative and come up with ideas, because the kids were still going to have PE, and we just had to figure out how to get kids moving and
make fun and challenging, and honestly, it's been really good. It's been different, but we've almost got everything that we wanted to cover done. Fitness testing has been done, but that's not everyone's favorite. I think they'd rather do the parachute than the pacer test, but we're good. It's just different. We haven't quite had the variety maybe we've had in years past, but honestly, we're just as a parents in the district as well, we're just really thankful to be back in person learning. PE is not meant to be done remotely, and I wasn't very good at it, although our videos got us some street cred, with the elementary kids, but we're just glad to be back in person.
All right, my name is Blaise Walensky, and I'm one of the PE teachers at the middle school. First, going to start out with just kind of an overview of how we run things. 6th and 7th graders see us throughout the entire year, and they rotate with tech and living, so they see us every other day. 8th grade has us 3 hexers throughout the year, and they see us every day on those hexers that they have PE. How we structure our class, Mondays and Fridays are unit days. So example, if we're in our volleyball unit, all of our students will have volleyball on Monday and Friday. Wednesdays is a wellness day, so we have cardio, might be workout videos, yoga, relaxation. It's kind of a mixed bag on those Wednesdays that we rotate through. Tuesdays and Thursdays are weight room days. So on Tuesdays, boys lift while girls are having a unit day, and then it flip-flops. Thursday, girls lift while the boys have their unit day. There's a list of some of the activities we do throughout the year. Kind of like, as Bart was saying, that's just a little bit of what we do, just to kind of give you an idea. So with how our year went with the impact of COVID, we didn't use the locker room this year. Just the amount of kids we have in class, the space in there just wasn't going to work out. So we have the weight room, we store their backpacks, and they just kind of like elementary school, they wear their school clothes for PE. We didn't start using equipment until October. Kind of how guidelines changed throughout the year, we kind of slowly transitioned to using equipment. So we made some modified games. Like one example I listed there was the no hands kickball game that we used. How class is looking currently, mostly normal activities, obviously with sanitizing, but we're finishing up our badminton pickleball tournament this week. One group will have their championship tomorrow, and the other group will have it on Friday. But as we start class, students will sanitize before we start anything, and then myself and Victoria, we sanitize the equipment in each class period. In regards to mask use, obviously, they're required when indoors, if we're outside, and we're doing workout for track, or we're out playing soccer, and we're actively moving, then it's optional. But if we're given some sort of instruction, or we're playing a kickball game and they're in line, they're right next to each other, around each other, then we ask them to put their mask up when they're right next to each other. On to the high school.
All right, so an overview of high school. First off, again, students are required to take 2 years of physical education in order to graduate. Through that course offerings, they have choice of foundation of PE, fitness course, which we added this year. They are required to take the semester of health. They can then take either team sports, lifetime activities, or strength and conditioning. The numbers to the right are what we currently offer for sections throughout the year. Foundations of PE and fitness are semester-length courses, team sports, lifetime activities, and strength and conditioning used to be year-long. We've now transitioned to semester options so that there's a little bit more flexibility within our scheduling. Because as we grow, we are having issues with finding places over time where students can fit into the PE department. We're high demand, which we like, and we're trying to meet the demand that we have from our students. All right, so almost a year in, again, we're fortunate to be in person. We learned a lot of things early on with us being able to roll out our summer offering and strength conditioning. I think especially at high school, it really helped us see what worked, what didn't, and allowed us to work those kinks out as we got the summer going, so that when we got back to full on with our students, we were ready to roll with the ground on our feet rather than scratching our heads trying to figure out where we were going. So the last three phases, or the last phase of the past year, last school year we went full online. I think as these guys kind of alluded to, PE is not really conducive for online learning. I think all of us are certified and very qualified to program out ways to stay active. But I think we noticed and our students noticed that what we're really good at and what they're good at is building that relationship side of it. And I was missing with the online process, and it's still really hard one to figure out right now with some of our students who are e-learners. We feel like we had really high involvement, but at the same time, we missed out on a lot of things that you see visually or just cue-wise when you interact with somebody on a one-to-one basis. This summer, we were still rolling through the 20 students at a time in the spaces. We were split out between the old weight room, if you're familiar with the high school, that was over by the wrestling room, our current weight room, and then we used that dynamic room. So we had 3 spaces, 20 student limit within that space. At that time, we were doing questionnaires, taking temperatures, mask cleaning. I'd say your pretty hardcore protocols were in this summer. When we got to the school year, we upped the number that we could put in the space to 40. We are still wearing masks when we are active inside those spaces. Similar to the middle school, we get outside, those masks can come off, but we try to make sure that if we're in a space where we can't maintain distance, the mask is staying on. We were fortunate we were able to use the locker rooms. What we did with that is we went in, Jocelyn and I, and spaced out every 6 feet so that we could do our best to space. We are fortunate we have 2 locker rooms that are specific to our PE, or 4 locker rooms, 2 to male, 2 to female, that we could space out our students. We're also fortunate we had the 2 competition locker rooms that we have utilized a little bit to help keep spacing. So do our best to keep spacing there. Also through the tracking purposes, within our classes, we put students into countries or teams, and throughout the year, that just makes it a little bit easier tracking in case you did have a hiccup or glitch where somebody was around COVID. In our strength classes, we also have them in specific groups, and the nice thing there is they were able to stay and are able to stay pretty well distanced away, so you're clear on who's within the 6-foot boundary area. And then again, we're still constantly cleaning equipment throughout the day. How it's positively influenced the high school. Kind of like Bart said, we really jumped in, started collaborating to figure out how do you use technology to reach the students, what are different ways we can do it to get our curriculum across, but at the same time, like I said, what we really missed out on was that interaction with the students. I'm biased, but feeling like at the high school, I feel like last year, how we interacted via Twitter and kind of just try to grab a snapshot of the students really worked well for us. I mean, you guys were all there. It got depressing for a while. It was nice to see faces. It was nice to get videos. It was nice to share that stuff out and kind of brag it up. And it was nice to have other school districts reach out and say, hey, that's really cool. Can we jump in with you on that? We became more efficient at utilizing spaces, as I discussed, doing our best to keep space, but also trying to figure out, we've got all these students, here's some space that we don't use. How do we use it? What activities are we not doing that we can do more efficiently? And then the last one forces us to be a little bit more cognizant on that body language and what do we see and what cues are we giving. And again, you can't see the smile on somebody's face, but what are the things that we're seeing while you're interacting with that person that either gives me a clue of, hey, maybe it's a great opportunity to give them a positive feedback, or maybe this is an opportunity where I need to jump in and say, hey, is everything okay? But I do think with the mask, that's been really hard. But the nice thing with PE, again, being person to person in our classrooms as they come down, I feel like we have a unique environment where we get to interact with students, not 100% underneath the rigors of standards like other teachers, where we can say, hey, let's take a second, let's step back, what's going on? And I do think we've gotten better across the board at doing that. Challenges created by the protocols that we've had in place. Compared to usual, a very small portion of our 9th graders went through our activity-based PE course this year. We just didn't have, I guess, lack of better words, when we created the split and the foundations of PE, usually our students, all of our 9th graders went through that. But this year, with just how everything worked out, it wasn't required for them to go through. So I guess the question coming from this year is, what will this do to class sizes moving forward, as we do need to get 2 years for those students? At the same time, we have a lot of students that take 4 years of PE, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. I just think it's something we need to be cognizant of. Due to cleaning equipment, potentially right now up to 9 times a day, we have an equipment break where we're down quicker than usual. I think we need to be budgetary aware as we start making purchases for next year within our department. What are areas that need to be focused on more? What are some avenues we can go down as far as looking for grants or assistance to make sure that we can provide the students as much as possible? And the last one, students still distance learning are not receiving the high level of education we're able to provide at school. When you have a student home by themselves, they're in a team sports class, it's hard to say, okay, today we're gonna play softball, here's your team. It's just a different feel, which kind of changes up their experience. And so when they come back, what gap will be present when the student returns? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and how are we gonna go ahead and fill or help bring that gap as opposed to where we can get them. Mr. Boys, Flex Friday. That was part of our social media outkick last year. If you followed our strength conditioning, every Friday we started trying to get everyone engaged, involved somehow. So we did Flex Friday. Sometimes we'd have to do push-ups or do other activities, but again, it sounds odd, but this was the highlight every week for us as far as the teachers. And I think our students and families really got to kick out of it too. So I do appreciate Mr. Boys getting involved. That was awesome. Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Those are my real arms. Promise.
I have zeroed out.
No Photoshop there.
Anything from the board? I half expected y'all to break out the parachute for us.
Next time.
Former high school PE teacher here in the CASA, and I can tell you, my design was not as sophisticated as many moons ago in my defense. But thank you very much
Thanks for having us.
for sharing the curriculum and the leadership of our students, particularly in this unusual year that we have managed. So thank you for that. Good, we're moving on now to our strategic planning update, and I believe we're focusing on goal 3. I should be able to cite that verbatim by now, I would guess, but I won't be able to. Collaboration.
It is community collaboration. What a great transition, and I did not pay the PE department. I promise, I would have picked a better one of my arms. Mr. Lamberty and I'm Chad Boys, the principal at Anchor Point Elementary, and Greg Lamberty is the assistant principal at the high school, and we have for years been tasked with community collaboration, which is our strategic plan goal number 3. There are 4, so we're number 3. And there's the goal. Bennington Public Schools will increase collaboration between the school district and community to create a safe, caring, and positive learning environment. And years ago, that was one of the things we first did to help our committee kind of get a sense of what we were looking for as we kind of worked on this strategic plan goal. Mr. Lambert, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the microphone, so my fellow seniors down in the gym, they can't hear what I'm saying. You know, our goal, we feel, is a very large umbrella. So underneath that, there have been things that have come to us. There have been things that we have decided to go down. One of the big ones is our branding. That is one of the logos that was produced about a year ago at this time. We partnered with a group, BSN Sports, that provided us 4 logos. We solicited feedback from the community, from our kids, from our teachers, and we came up with 4 logos. We are still kind of in a holding pattern, I would say, in terms of getting those trademarks. The last time we came to the board, we had proposed 4 different options, 4 different price levels. I think the recommendation from our legal team was to use the state trademarking license, which there is a fee, and it would be applied to each one of those. But again, those would protect those 4 logos for us and allow us to enter into partnerships as opposed to those being just taken and used for personal profit by individual vendors. The second thing that we've spent a lot of time on is the app. It should be a smartphone-friendly app that continues to be developed and is always a work in progress based on the feedback and the features and the ever-evolving uses of technology. COVID collaboration, I'm just going to say that the PE guys did a wonderful job and covered a lot of what our school district did throughout the year. I will say Dr. Mimic does deserve quite a bit of credit for what was designed last summer and kind of that plan springboarded into the school year. So he was a definite leader and definitely was able to network, use his connections to provide us a positive direction to make sure our kids got some resources, got some work in while everybody else was cooped up at home. Broadcasting of events is a new venture we brought in this year, and I will just say that there's just never enough to go around. Something that we've definitely learned. Technology is a wonderful thing, and it also brings with it a number of challenges.
All right, so next steps, kind of round it all up. So next steps, the last update to our website was done in 2015. Recently, Mr. Uckman, myself, Mr. Lamberty, Ms. Endenbosch, who's like our webmasteress of the entire district. We have various webmasters in each building. She is like the head webmaster. And we met with ESU, who's been building our website and kind of maintaining our website since 2015. And they really encourage us to kind of go look. We've just gotten big enough as a district that we need to kind of look for other vendors to help us with that. With that being said, we currently have our app on the same system as our school messenger. And that same company also does websites. So we can have kind of the trio of technologies, kind of that communication piece for us underneath the same umbrella with the company. We're getting ready to roll out that app, but the website needs to be more responsive in order for the app to work more effectively. ADA compliance and different things like that, responsive design, continue to need to be updated for the website. Data shows that 80% of our users use mobile devices, and that was really one of the things we focused on, was that when they go to our current website, the design is not responsive to what device you're on, and we really want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those using our website. And then Dr. Hawk, Dr. Hoagie, we've kind of started those discussions to align our school messenger, our app, and the website all under the same company as I had mentioned earlier. And then we would like to try to have a new site ready to roll by December of 2021. So, and then that last piece that Mr. Lamberty had talked about, the trademark and Bennington logos. So that's our presentation. Are there any questions?
You brought up about live streaming for any of the events, meaning any of the band concerts, any of the plays, softball, basketball, football. What can we do to make sure we can do that? Grandparents are all across the nation. I mean, they want to be able to see this stuff too, I'm sure. So what can we do to make sure that everything's getting covered?
Well, I know Mr. Kessel's working awfully hard in terms of getting the right equipment. I think that's number one, is we've got to have enough technology to cover the various spots where our kids are performing and competing. Right now, tonight's a perfect example. We have a baseball game going on. We have a soccer game going on, both conference tournament games, both pretty important contests. We only have one set of equipment, we really have to pick one. And that becomes a perception issue with a lot of people, that we're valuing one over the other, and that's a struggle. He is investing time, he is investing money, resources into getting some outside focus cameras. So the group that we partner with, Huddle Technology, they're the ones that provided the camera indoors. So Chris has done a lot of research to bring that product and put those out at the stadium. The softball facility likely, and just kind of see where do we need them, how many can we get, and what's going to serve the amount of kids. The choir, the band, the one-act play, the musical, those are not forgotten either. And I think we want to be able to make sure we have the resources for those groups. There are usually a few more hurdles for them because of copyright issues and productions, but I feel like those are also things that we can definitely, we've learned a lot this year. This first year, it's just like everything, you feel like you have a great plan, and then you jump in and you find 19 different things you didn't think about, and you get your feedback, and you do the best you can. And, I think part of it too is a scheduling piece. We'd like to get our kids involved with some broadcasting, building their capabilities, building their confidence, and allowing them to sit in front of a TV screen or a radio broadcast and try and call a game with your classmates and the opposing team, because I don't think we want to put our kids in that position where I'd rather have us take the criticism right now than put our kids out there and have them, be exposed to some of the feedback that we get. So, I know people are just trying to help, but it's tough.
Do we have a price on anything like that? I mean, what we do have, I'm new to this, so.
Yeah, so the camera, and I only know this, and I don't quote me on the exact figure, but the camera that went in the gym, so the focus camera that got put in there was north of $3,000. So to be able to pull just that money from activity accounts or groups that were generous enough to donate some of their fundraising money to put that up, I mean, that's a hefty price tag for one camera. And then you multiply that, I would assume an outdoor camera is gonna cost a little more just because of the weather conditions and the, you know, the elements that it's exposed to. So yeah, I mean, and, you know, supply and demand too, so, yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, and I would just take this minute, I know we've, 1 minute, Dr. Hawk, I promise. Our coaches are super excited to bring back the youth camps, and I think that is always an important piece of community engagement. You know, that was lost last year, and I think that was lost from the high school kids all the way down to the kindergartners. So, to the elementary families, to the principals that are in the room, I would say, by the end of the month, you should be seeing that schedule. They're in the process of kind of ironing that out, trying to make sure that kids can do all the camps that they want to do. We take a lot of pride in trying to help you not have to choose. If you want to do every camp, hopefully that's an option, so you're not having to choose between a volleyball and a basketball camp. So thank you for your patience.
I appreciate that report. Are there any other questions from the board concerning strategic goal number 3 on collaboration?
I just had a question on the trademarking then. How long do we expect for that, or?
Yeah, I think there's an application we have to fill out, and I think it charges us by the logo. I think we can fill out one application, but 4 logos, and I'd have to go back and see, Chad, I think we had it listed in our previous presentation what it was gonna cost for a federal, for a state, and the other 2 levels, but I thought,
We can find
yeah,
out.
I mean, they're not, you know, we can definitely pursue that and get that information in front of you guys, so that way it's ready to get moving.
I know you guys have been working hard on it.
Yeah, we're pretty, and you know, that's the thing, is like, we are really proud, like, I saw a sweatshirt with the D on it the other day, and like, even the masks, like, we're proud of our stuff, and we wanna, you know, we've met with the booster clubs, we've met with the different organizations, and I think, to get it out there would be pretty cool, to really start pushing it out there.
And I do have a follow-up to that good question. Are there thoughts about creating at least a simple brand guide that folks maybe could be loaded, where they maybe could access those?
We do have a brand guide currently. It does have those 4 logos in it, and one thing I will say too is, you know, when you think about the elementaries, you know, we do have an anchor point at Pine Creek, Bennington Elementary. We've got basically one of these, or these, wherever my circle's at.
Your left.
On my left. We've got one of these for each of the buildings too, that could be used for those personal schools. But we do have a pretty simple, basic branding guide that they've kind of helped us put together.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you also for the report on the update of the site, as I know some of us have heard around navigation challenges, particularly on optimization for other devices. So thanks for that update. And you said end of year-ish?
We're hoping that, kind of like when we first did the site that we're currently at, we opened the year so that did not mess up any kind of registration or verification or anything. But then by December, be able to kind of really transition that over to the new site.
Thank you.
It's pretty promising, just the stuff that we heard from the company that hopefully we'll be working with.
Good, thank you for that update. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'll move to unfinished business. Some of these, not all of these items have potential opportunities for board action, though again, not all. We're beginning with our discussion and consideration of some change orders to our construction projects, and I do believe we have a few relatively, I suppose, small in the scheme of things, but.
Yes, we have 2 for the Pine Creek addition. One is that the city of Omaha is requiring the addition of some landscaping, and the other is just a wing wall addition that would be internally. And then the other one would be middle school, addition of a brick ledge that goes within the building. So those three are there for a motion and as required.
I move to approve PR1, PR2, and CCR02 as construction project change orders for a total cost of $16,149.65.
And Mark has made the motion to approve the change orders. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kara. There's a motion by Mark and a second by Kara to approve the $16,000 plus 3 change orders as listed in the motion. Is there any discussion?
How come the city's making us put trees in? It's, on the addition, our school property, if they can make us put trees in?
They can.
Oh, really?
And it's in the road right away, if you will. So they have those easement requirements that go along with them.
Okay.
So city of Omaha and outside, within their jurisdiction, but outside the city limits.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion before we call the roll? Cody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And we do have a few more notes that I mentioned earlier concerning the board policy review that I mentioned. Our first meeting, we don't have any action on this before you now, but just as we kind of discussed during committee report outs, we did set up several meetings already on the calendar with Mr. Levy throughout the year. We have already approved the $5,000 contract to enlist Mr. Levy for that work. Of course, we'll be inviting our policy committee to engage in reading those. For those of us who get excited about such things, that will be a delight, and of course, it is time consuming. We do have, like I said, 3 series that we are considering for each of those meetings, and I'm really hoping to wrap it up in August, but respectfully, it might take a little bit longer if we just need to deliberate longer. Any other pieces that I'm missing about that, Dr. Hawker, policy committee, that we ought to mention?
No, I think all of those things, I think Allison's comment earlier, as they all are tied together, so they all can get voted on at one time, is an important message as well.
And I was just gonna mention, are you ready for me, or do you guys want the policy committee want to talk through?
I'm good.
Okay.
That's all I have to share. I'm gonna put in those notes there.
I would, as not being on the policy committee, I would love to be in maybe a summary by Mr. Levy, or where you talked about maybe some overall look at the policies, and I would love to be part of that if we could at the end or at some point, that we could all be kind of.
So, I think that's a really good point. My thought was that we might consider an additional workshop for the board, because it is a lot of content, and then we could report back, and because it is just so much content, our workshops are already packed, they're already pre-scheduled. So my thought was, as we get closer to that time, that we just go ahead and schedule another workshop. Maybe we could couple it with some different line items, but for that purpose, and then we could kind of more formally report to you about what those changes are, and in addition perhaps as well. So, I mean, it's time consuming to edit, it's even more time consuming to create new ones. So, especially for that piece of it, I want to let the whole board have time. So I appreciate you saying that. That was my idea. My inside my head now is my out loud voice. So it might need to just be a thing now. So I really do appreciate the comment, because I know it will be difficult if you're not part of those conversations. So thank you for the suggestion.
Taking this on.
Thank you. Good question. Anything else on that point from the board?
I do, just discussion item only. I think, I'd like to draw some attention to the public forum and Mr. Dreesen's request for a motion that might be premature, but not too far off track. I think that this board policy review in its entirety is excellent. I appreciate that. I think it's also important to draw attention to how every year we look at designated policies that are required by state and approve those as directed. I think I want to know more, and this is probably a question for the policy committee as you were once attended to it, and maybe you can, about what the concern is regarding public forum being on this side of the line item versus this side of the line item. And if some board members might be able to speak to that, because as I've gone through here and I've looked up the policies for public participation, both for the board and for the state, and as I've looked up our minutes over the past 3 years, we have designated public forum in our minutes, and we have designated the content of public forum in the minutes. So I respect and appreciate the concern. However, I'm wondering about what is it really about? Because it's in there. I mean, we have documentation, we're acknowledging it, we're exceeding our time limits, we're following the policy. So I don't know if any of you board members can speak to that. That's my discussion for now.
Thank you, Dr.
I guess I can just hopefully chime in on a little bit and stop me if I go too far, but the discussion of that has always made me wonder why, how, what, when, where, because I've attended board meetings for years and always came in front of the board, asked questions, simple ones, weird ones, whatever. But I took it upon myself and just looked up many different school districts, city, county, called school districts. I've talked to a couple of different school board members at different facilities, and I think it's something we definitely have to look at. I mean, obviously, we are looking at it. There's a change that needs to happen, and I think we need to let this public talk amongst the meeting. I don't know where we're at yet, because that's our discussion that we can decide on to see where we're at. But it does need to happen within this meeting. It's my feelings. I feel that's the way it should be. After talking with some of the other board members from other school districts, they were kind of surprised that it's not in the meeting. And I said, well, that's what I'm trying to find out, why. I said that earlier for a reason, because I do feel it needs to happen in that. I don't know how fast we can get that done, but I feel that we could change that awfully quick, just for my feeling of getting the respect back from the public. I'm all about that. I've been here forever. Graduated here, raised all my kids here, graduated them all here except for the last one yet. I think it's something we need to do is earn a lot of respect back. And we can do it. I think we can be a great board. I just really hope this changes soon.
I appreciate those comments, and once again, I think the committee and also the questions from the other board members around expressing the urgency with which we need to engage this work. It is the core work of boards of education to enact policy and then to ensure practice is aligned with that. And it's hard work, and so I appreciate that input. The policy committee hears that, and we will, with a great deal of rigor, be working on that, and just want to lend some assurance to you and to our patrons as well about that. Anything else from the board around this point? Good, thank you. Hearing none, we will move to the next item on our agenda. And this is regarding a resolution for extending the FFCRA paid sick leave act. So, Dr. Hawk, I believe you're summarizing this.
Yes. At first, the federal government suggested that all be required to implement a policy on FERCA, which allowed for 80 hours or up to 2 weeks, depending on the number of hours that were scheduled. That ended December 31st. CARES Act 2 was enacted, which allowed for that to go through March 31st, which the board approved in January. CARES Act 3 then was passed by Congress here in the last month to 6 weeks, and was authorizing the same leave and would extend through September 30th. It is a point work conditions. So did have a discussion with the association, that's a bargaining unit for all certified staff. They did approve extending this through the end of the school year. Therefore, there is a resolution that's attached that would be up for approval this evening. And that would be to extend the FERCA Act, keeping the same 80 hours on the same time clock and moving forward through the end of the school year. So that motion is before you.
There is a potential motion before the board concerning the FFCRA leave benefits.
I move to approve the resolution for the extension of voluntary and temporary FFCRA leave benefits to eligible employees until August 12th, 2021, as presented.
Second.
There's a motion by Kara and a second by Tim. Are there any questions or discussion from the board concerning this motion to extend the FFCRA leave benefits? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
And the motion does pass to extend those to August the 12th of 2021. Dr. Hoagie, as has been the case throughout the pandemic, we've invited you and your colleagues to provide input and updates concerning our school district's approach and plan in the midst of the pandemic. I appreciate the other ways with which you have done that. Case in point, our spotlight report from our physical education leaders today. So I appreciate you being here to update us once again on what we know today.
Absolutely. We always begin with review of where we're at. Our goal is to have our kids in school and as safe as possible as we approach things. Few new things that we'll cover tonight. We'll look a little bit about health services update you on that, some cleaning, academics, and our school operations. As always, our tiers that we are still covering tier 2, and that is due to that level of safety that we want for students with 100% in attendance. Again, that our tier level is not based solely on the DCHD dial, but on a number of things that we have impacts on. One of those things that we consider on that is the number of people who have been impacted by COVID. As you can see, in the month of March, we have numbers going up again. So this is a concern for us. Staff out on FERCA leave is not as high, but we've had a number of staff use up their time already at this point. But we are up in numbers for both students and staff slightly this month. Overall, our numbers are about the same. You'll notice on the last graph, we had about 20 kids from close contact through school. In quarantine, our numbers are slightly higher because parents will call in students who have been exposed. So our remote learners are pretty stable at this point, just over 150 students. So we're at less than 4% of our student body with that. To show you from the beginning of the year to where we are in the month of April, you'll see that our elementary numbers have continued to go down. We have lots more students in school than we did earlier. Middle school, for the last texture, is about down to 35 students who have not returned to school. And then the high school has stayed pretty consistent throughout the year. Overall, for remote learning, you'll notice the numbers in red are where we have students in quarantine who are out. But overall, we're at about 4.5% of our district that's in remote learning. Now, not always do students go on remote learning if they are out in quarantine. That's a family choice to use those as sick days, where the kids would make up their work by communicating with their teachers or packets going home. But they do have the choice to go on remote learning, and that would be reflected in this report. academics, we have state testing going on. Students who are remote learning are making appointments to come in to take those tests. The state has given us an opportunity to use, if a family cannot or chooses not to bring the students in for a remote, there are COVID waivers that we are allowed to use if that's a family's choice for this 1 year in this condition. Summer school numbers we have updated for you now. We have 256 students in the elementary. That is grades K through 5. We have 30 staff members, so we will have a full building pretty much for summer school. Our goal in summer school is to keep our student ratio as low as possible. 10 students to 1 teacher is our goal, and so we're working hard for those numbers as well. Middle school will have 51 students spread across 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we have 8 certified staff who will be working with those students. Overall, for our high school, we are offering 2 sessions this year. Our focus is credit recovery. Research shows that if we don't get kids on track to graduate by earning enough credits, we won't get them graduated. So that really is our focus with summer programs for the high school. So you'll see that we will be staffing and managing 25 students in a variety of subjects. We'll be offering an in-person algebra course. The students seem to do better with that personal interaction with a teacher rather than an online course. So that's our plan for the high school. We'll offer 2 teachers with 2 rooms and 1 session of algebra, and then repeat that again in the month of July. We're working on a special ed plan to be able to facilitate and support those students this summer as well as they work toward high school graduation. Other safety things that we are working with summer school protocols, we're looking at, we will continue our masks through summer school, we'll continue hand washing, sanitizer, and spot cleaning areas. That seems to be the message. Not so much concern about the computers or balls or books at this time spreading germs, but door handles and desktops. And so those are things that we will continue to spot clean and focus on during summer school. Finally, on health services, to bring you up to date on vaccines, we have offered over 550 shots to employees, whether they are teachers or substitute teachers, our after-school program, coaches, foundation staff. So we have had 65% of our staff vaccinated, the teaching staff 79%, and then about 21% of our staff either could not make the scheduling work or chose not to take the vaccine. So we're pretty pleased with that. Quarantine updates, the health department has changed these again for us as more people are vaccinated. You can now get an antibody test so that we can shorten the quarantine period of time. And so that's helping us get kids back to school and staff back to school quicker. So finally, we're keeping up to date to revise this plan. We're working with our reading and math teams for some summer learning opportunities for our students in K through 7th grade as those 8th graders move on to high school. We're still using that early dismissal time that you have allotted us for professional development and really building that consistency in instruction. So working on documenting all of our academic progress, and we'll continue to do that through our summer programs as well. What questions might you have for me?
I'm wondering when we might have information about the fall. I know we have a lot of patrons who are concerned about that. Do we have an estimated timeline on when a decision will be made?
We really have not set that out at this point. A number of districts are working together to share ideas about what we might be able to do to provide the best opportunities for kids throughout the metro. So we are in that process, and we'll have our second meeting next week.
Thank you, Dr. Hovey. Any other questions from the board?
I
I just had one on high school, summer school,
Yes.
where we were referring to kind of maxes of students. Are you comfortable that those who need summer school and are offered it are kind of within those maxes that we're accommodating all needs?
The 2 sessions help us support that.
Okay.
We did that last year for the first time and had a lot of success with it. And so Dr. McGee and I are talking for that for this year as well. So we have 2 sessions, in each session, also a morning and afternoon session. So right now, we feel pretty good about what our license looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again. We have one more item on our unfinished or ongoing business. We mentioned earlier our curriculum Americanism report out, so that we do have proposals before the board to consider, and there is a potential motion before the board to approve those. Thank you, Dr. Hoff. I was going to ask if you could please pull that list up. Obviously, a great many of these proposals are concerning additional educators, classroom educators, but of course, coaches and activity support personnel as well, as you can see from the list in the report. With that, I move to accept the recommendations of the Curriculum and Americanism Committee and Administration for 2021-22 curriculum and personnel modifications and additions as outlined in the March 31st Curriculum and Americanism Committee report and pending the 2021-22 budget approval.
I'll second.
I made the motion, this is seconded by Kara. Are there any other questions or concerns or comments from the board concerning this list of potential proposals for approval? Hearing none, Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes. The motion to approve the list, which again was $746,457, and in addition, $55,000 plus in costs as shown on the report. Thank you, board. And moving on to new business. We do have a proposal, a report rather before the board, a potential action by the board concerning the high school sites built and building ancillary facility improvements.
Yes, thank you very much. First off, a little bit of background on the proposal itself. So there's a multitude of things within the scope of the work. Obviously, the press box and the restrooms and concession stands that go along with that. The existing restrooms within the stadium, concession stand, adding to that, adding 450 seats. Some remodeling or rework on railing and guardrails at the stadium, site work for existing bus barn to expand the parking, and then obviously to redo the parking lots in a multitude of phases. There are 4 phases of construction, anything from finishing this summer 2021 into working particularly in parking lots 2022. As you can see, the different phases. Phase 1 would include press box at the softball field and the lower parking lot along with the plaza for the high school stadium, which includes soccer, track, and football. Phases 2, 3, 4, and 5 are anywhere from parking lot to concession stand restroom at the softball field. And so those are in different colors that go along with that. The timelines that go along with that, phase 1 includes the south parking lot, stadium concrete retaining walls, and the press box. That is to start May 24th and end August 19th. Obviously, if we can get in and start construction earlier, particularly on some of the things that don't involve parking lot, we'll do so as we move forward if the board approves contract this evening. Phases 2, 3, and 4 are basically extending out into 22. Phasing 2 does include some work that can be done other than summer work. Phases 3 and 4 are parking lot, and obviously the parking lot is needed during the school year. So if the company that would be selected tonight, if board approves, wants to tackle any one of those parking lot initiatives this summer, they're welcome to do so, but they have until August 22 to get those completed. We received 3 bids. You can see the contractors there. There is a base bid and there's a multitude of alternatives or alternates that go along with that. As we move along, you can see the alternates 1 through 6, 2 different designs on the press box. Parking lot improvements, the reason that the parking lot improvements 3, 4, and 5 were put as alternates is to allow the board the opportunity to shift those if they thought the pricing was too much at this point in time. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And alternate number 6 was a parking lot light replacement, which does have some work with the Building and Finance Committee to review along with the 2018 bond issue in the north parking lot. The recommendation from the committee is to go along with the low base bid of DCM Construction and to add alternate CC2, which is a 12 by 24 parking lot, 12 by 24 press box, excuse me, and alternate CC3, 4, and 5. A little bit about each. The construction cost was over by about 19%. However, there is always contingency fund and escalating cost or escalating factor that would be added or taken away from the $611,000. So that contingency fund is always budgeted for most projects. So the 19% doesn't have as much of a stake if you don't have those change orders as was approved earlier this evening. And the scope of the work for the press box has changed. Where it was on top of the concession stand and restroom at one point in time. It's now moved behind home plate, and it has been elevated and increased in size. So those things are adding to the overage at this point in time. As the Building and Finance Committee talked about the parking lot, there was about a $50,000 difference in overage to that. And that equates to about 5% what the estimated cost was. The board could have delayed that, but it couldn't delay it into the fall, i.e. you need those parking lots and you could not work at it until the next summer. So you really are looking at about a year away if you were to rebid something like that. So the board thought there was value, or the Building and Finance Committee thought there was value in doing that. So again, the recommendation is before you to take the low bid of DCM Construction and alternates CC2, 3, 4, and 5. Just a little bit, Pine Creek addition, the roads that go along with site number 5 for the elementary, site number 2 for the middle school, and elementary 5 and middle school number 2, all came before this because of seats needed and the expansion of those things for students moving forward. As you can see, you still have 2 projects, one before you this evening, and the other which is delayed and could be done at another time. So it is the recommendation of the Building and Finance Committee that you have before you this evening. Are there any questions that the board has at this point in time? Dr. Good.
I have questions, I don't know if it's the right time to ask them. So, I see that there's a motion here that includes all 6 alternates,
Should not.
or 5, well,
It should include 2, 3, 4, and 5.
okay. I wonder if we might break those down, and here's what I'm also wondering about that softball press box. Is the second tier concrete or wood?
There's wood.
Okay, because there was concern and question about concrete being able to gain the reception that was needed, right? So that's cool. All right, because I think you might want to split out those 2, because I do not agree with the parking lot improvements and the excess that is out there for the parking lots, and the fact that we're 19% over budget, and because the bond was approved at a 60-40 ratio, I have some concerns about that.
Okay.
While I support the press box idea, it seems justifiable and reasonable. It seems that the parking lot costs are excessive.
And certainly the Building and Finance Committee can work into that. We also have a representative from DLR, Curtis Johnson, here this evening. The excess cost is related to cement, primarily for the parking lot. It was 5% over and not the total 19% as the total project. It is thought that if you did delay the project for the parking lots, you would have to bring it back the following year. You couldn't bring it back 3 months from now or 6 months from now because of the timing of the project. Therefore, an escalating factor in most construction is 5%. Therefore, I don't think, listening to the DLR group and listening to the Building and Finance Committee, that you would gain savings as hoped for by delaying this project. And I'll let the Building and Finance Committee and Mr. Johnson discuss that as well.
Can you clarify? I'm sorry, Tim. This is not new parking, this is repair to existing parking.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Tim, you're on the committee as well.
Yes, correct. Yep. I just know, I mean, from a construction standpoint, we use a lot of concrete through the years. Grain bin facilities, shed floors, whatever we have to do. And it is dramatically going up every year. It absolutely is. I've got a neighbor that actually works it, pours the concrete, and I just literally asked him yesterday for this reason, how much more has it gone up this year? He just started all his projects. And he said he went from last year, I think it was like his price, $107, $110. It's over $130 now. So it has dramatically increased on the concrete side. And now he has to justify that to all his people that he's gonna go start working for and tell them, hey, we've got major increases here again. He vowed it's never gone down. He's never seen it gone down, forever. So.
Yeah, the other thing I was gonna mention is, I think the finance committee was concerned about the liability associated with the parking lot. And that from our perspective, it's in desperate need of repair. So that was another factor that we could discuss.
Heather, if I could, since I'm a numbers guy, let me break a couple things down. So total projects over by 19%, right? You've heard that the parking is over, or the concrete for parking is over about 5%. Well, that means that something else has got to be way over, right, in order to average out at 19%, right? So what are the other things that are over if it's not the concrete for the parking? There are two things. One is the press box for the softball facility. So as originally conceived, that was a joint facility, right, with the press box on top of the concession stand. And so there was about a $50,000 budget for that press box. So when you accept an alternate that's $190,000, you are over budget by 140 grand, or nearly 300%. It's about 280% on a fairly small component of the project. Right, the rest of where we're over is on the base bid, which includes the concession facilities for both softball and for the stadium, as well as stadium seating, and a fair amount of concrete in that location. But that is over 15%. And we think it's not the concrete part of that. It's the electrical, the steel, those components and concessions. We don't know because the base bid, and you taught me, Curtis, and I listened, right? The base bid doesn't come back to us in a detailed, itemized fashion, but one can kind of infer, looking at the concrete bids on the parking, that it's those concession facilities and those components of it that are kind of driving the budget overage on the base bid, which is most of the overage. The softball press box is a scope change, rather than really a cost overrun from a materials perspective that the board decided to examine. Does that help?
That helps, but help me math this.
Sure.
If we have 140K over for the softball press box, we are instantly increasing us significantly by
the 502K, the 180K, 198K, 195K for the parking lot. And I understand that we might have some concerns for safety with the parking lot. I'd like to know exactly what they are. I mean, it's bumpy, it's not comfortable, but you know what? Those are some speed bumps that are in there that slow some of us down, seriously. And I mean, and I would suggest, I mean, if we really need to do something like this much of an increase, that we add it to our next bond that's coming up, you know, sooner than we'd like to.
So if I could, before you chime in, Dr. Hogg, I once was under the impression that these alternates did not have budget in the bond issue. They in fact do. So the parking CC3 and 4 and 5 are not over budget numbers or not additions in totality. We actually had a budget for those alternates. The reason we chose to bid them differently was because we thought we might want to defer them. So there is budget, and in that 502 and 180 and roughly almost 800 grand, we are only about $50,000 over budget on that component. Does that?
Yes, and then we need to say that, because what we're saying is that we're 19% over budget, 3.7 million over budget, but we need to put that into context that we have budgeted for alternatives, and the alternatives are in this box, and here's what they are, and this is how much they are, because when you say we're maybe 50K over, then that's reasonable to chew on. But if we continue to say, you know, we are under a microscope here, and it is important to have the transparency and the conversation of what these things really mean to the public. That's all I got.
Yeah,
That was helpful.
I didn't want to step on your other question about the necessity on parking lots, so if somebody wants to address that.
The liability, I think, that was discussed is not necessarily for vehicles, but it's for people. And that if somebody was to hurt themselves while walking in the parking lot by stepping in something that was broken or a hole, if you will, that could come back on the school district.
Thank you. And does this bid, I have a quick question, and maybe it's you, maybe. Are we addressing any problems that are happening in the parking lot with drainage? Okay, that's still part of the bid.
I think over time, underground water has developed like a spring. And so this project includes subgrade drainage, like drain tile, as well as subgrade rock to create a drainage way through the parking lot to the lower portion towards Bennington Creek.
Thank you.
A general question concerning the $3.77 million proposal by Midwest DCM, and Curtis, that might be for you. I presume that bid is contingent upon the inclusion of these alternates as it was bid, or maybe Mark, you can help with this. Or is that total? Help me understand the expectation of the bidder concerning the inclusion of all of these alternates with that. And
each individual number stands alone, so the alternates can be accepted in any order or amount.
Thank you. There is a potential motion before the board. Thank you for the information from the committee, the administration, and from DLR regarding that.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve CC2 at 12-foot by 24-foot softball press box in the amount of $190,000.
There is a motion that represents CC2 before the board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion by Heather and a second from Tim concerning CC2. Are there questions and discussion from the board concerning that motion for this single alternate project on the list? Hearing none, Jody, call the roll.
Valerie?
Yes?
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
I move to award the base bid for contract for high school and site and support building improvements, including CC 3, 4, and 5, to Midwest DCM Construction Company as the lowest bidder.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mark
Second.
and a second by Allison. And for clarity on the motion for the secretary, it includes CC3, CC4, and CC5, and awarding that base bid to Midwest DCM Construction Company. Are there any questions or discussion from the board concerning this motion?
I guess I did ask Curtis in the last meeting, but these guys are qualified to do all of these projects, correct?
Yes, we have worked with Midwest DCM at several projects in Gretna,
Okay.
and they're a qualified bidder and reputable in the Omaha metro area.
In Gretna at their school, I guess I'm
Yep.
asking? Okay.
It was on their bus barn and middle school gym addition and renovation.
Okay, thank you.
And my favorite question, the contract includes liquidating damages for construction delays, is that correct?
That is correct. The dollar amount for that motion would be $3,580,000.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much for that. I would like to add that to the motion, if we can make that friendly amendment, because the amount was not included in the original motion. If everyone's comfortable with the math on that, we can make that amendment, it's the 3.58 balance. Okay. If anyone is not okay with that, please do feel free to say so. Thank you. Thank you. Jody, please do call the roll.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
No.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes concerning CC3, 4, 5, and base bid award to Midwest DCM Construction for all of those previously named, including CC2 in the press box. So there's some celebration about that. Congratulations to the committee for that hard work, and thank you for bringing that information to the board. The next item on our agenda is concerning hot lunch and breakfast prices. Thank you to Ms. Wassenaw once again for bringing us that good data earlier in our meeting to help inform this conversation concerning hot lunch, breakfast prices, and milk. As I recall, she mentioned. And anything that you need to add to the board concerning this, Dr. Hawk?
No, as stated earlier, there is a 5 cent, not 5%, 5 cent increase recommendation as listed in the motion.
There is potential language, potential motion for the board.
I move to set 2021-22 prices for student and adult hot lunch and breakfast as presented, noting that it's a nickel increase on breakfast and lunch and for all buildings.
Second. There is a motion before the board by Mark and a second by Heather concerning increasing all of the itemized nutrition prices by nickel. Is there any discussion, or are there any additional questions from the board concerning this increase to take effect potentially in the upcoming school year?
I was just going to mention, I did note in my review, there is an array in comparison of lunch prices throughout the district. Historically, we have been within a couple of cents of that average for both breakfast and lunch at all buildings. By my math, this increase will keep us in that zone.
Yeah, I would just make the math note, just go back to math, that I appreciate that we are considering fairly nominal increases about that, as I do appreciate the federal free lunch program and opportunity for families. And I recognize this is a fairly nominal increase, but I still want to acknowledge that for some of these items, percentage-wise, it's higher than obviously for other items. So just making a note of that, appreciate the great work that the team has done over the last year to make those meals available, and continuing to work for remote learning families as well on that. But did want to point that out concerning the potential increases that we're discussing. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Jody, please call the roll.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
And a motion to increase these items by, and Nicole does pass for the 2021-22 school year. Next on our agenda are the summer band programs. As we have done traditionally annually, we have considered that additional expertise to support our students in their learning and growth during the summertime.
You have before you a motion that is the same as the previous year, which will give a stipend of $4,000 to Mr. Fonda for a summer band program.
I move to approve the recommended lesson structure and pay for a summer band program with payment not to exceed $4,000 to be paid to Chas Fonda on or before August 15, 2021.
There's a motion by Kara, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. The motion by Kara and second by Mark is to approve the mentioned stipend for Mr. Fonda concerning summer band program support. Any questions or discussion from the board?
How many kids actually attend this? You know?
It is within the letter and the attachment, but it is 30-minute lessons. And I have to do the math, but it is pretty much the high school band program that is allowed to do this.
Hearing no other questions from the board, Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes?
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
There is a similar proposal concerning vocal music program for summertime before the board.
Again, this is $1,800. The lessons are approximately $20 per 30-minute session, and we're looking at approximately 90 sessions or 90 lessons through the summer.
I move to approve the recommended lesson structure and pay for summer vocal program with payment not to exceed $1,800 to be paid to Ty Hankey on or before August 15th, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Heather and a second by Mark. Are there any questions or discussion from the board concerning this stipend to be paid to Mr. Hanky? There is obvious variance in those two stipends, and I imagine there's some input around that might be helpful for the board. On the $4,000 one we just approved concerning band and $1,800 here, maybe it's obvious, but I'm missing it.
No, nothing obvious there. This is what Mr. Hankey has proposed.
And this came from the department.
That is
For the
correct.
support, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions from the board? Good, Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
And that motion to approve that stipend for Mr. Hickey and support around summer vocals has been approved. The certificated teachers and staff members report.
Yes, this is for the certificated staff. This is for non-tenured and tenured. This is the continuation contract to extend contracts for all that are on the list for the 2021-22 school term. It's an annual motion by the board.
I move to approve the continuing contracts of the certificated teachers and administrators as presented and recommended by the administration.
I'll second.
The motion is made by myself and there's a second by Kara to approve these contracts for the certificated teachers and administrators as presented. Are there any questions or comments from the board concerning this report? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes. And the motion to approve that report passes, and thank you. Once again, heartfelt thanks to all of our educators and the ways that you support the growth and learning of our kids. Appreciate that. Moving to personnel considerations, we do traditionally look at resignations first, and it looks as if we do have.
You have 9 certificated staff and 2 support staff, either for various stay-at-home, move to another job location, or retirement.
Thank you for the report. There is a potential motion before the board concerning these resignations.
I'll move to accept the resignations of Brooke Jones, Chelsea Ewart, Caitlin Rowan, Lori Nelson, Courtney Lovell, Marissa Pace, Pam Sutton, Josh Westgard, Alexa Franco, Megan Rathke, and Faith Richford from their assignments with regret and thanks for the years of service to the district.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Heather and a second by Tim to accept these resignations. Any other questions or discussion from the board?
Oh, yes. While we appreciate every single one of these folks for sharing their time with our young people, I would like to acknowledge that Lori Nelson is retiring and she has been here since 1992. High school art teacher. Thank you, Mrs. Nelson.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
And we do have, looks like at least one hire.
We have a multitude of hires.
Multitude hires.
First, we'll start with the administrator, assistant middle school principal, Ms. Renee Rucker. Motion is before you.
I so move to approve the hiring of Ms. Renee Rucker as assistant middle school principal with an administrative contract of 225 days at a salary of $102,000 for the 2021-22 school year, pending 2021-22 budget approval.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Tim has moved, Mark seconded to approve the hiring of Mrs. Rucker in our middle school. Are there any questions or discussion from the board? Jody, please call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Exciting. Warm welcome to Mrs. Rucker for our middle school administrative staff. Thank you.
You have a list of certificated staff, upwards to 17 for various jobs within elementary, middle school, and high school. Motion is second on the list.
I move to accept the recommendation of the administration and approve the hiring of personnel for the 2021-22 school year, pending and conditional on 2021-22 budget approval, as presented. Samantha Mandel, Shane Tibbles, Brittany Snyder, Mallory Fink, Bailey Honeywell, Jennifer Solomon, Mackenzie White, Jennifer Callahan, Amanda Perkins, Scott Cerny, Ariel Levine, Lindsay Fisher, Troy Bradburn, Catherine Strahan, Megan Pietzmeyer, Jane Becker, and Emily Moore, with apologies to mispronunciations.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
There is a motion by Mark and a second by Heather to approve the hiring of these personnel as presented. Thank you for reading those. Any questions or discussion from the board?
I do see one Bennington kid for sure. We'll get a couple on here for sure.
There are.
One Bennington and one that has ties to Bennington.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Always exciting. Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And leaders, thank you. That motion, of course, passes, and we welcome all of those educators to our district. We are delighted to have you. Go Badgers. We also have a few staff hires that we are recommending.
You have a list of support staff. And the motion is before you.
I move to accept the recommendation of the administration and approve the hiring of support staff personnel for the 2021 school year, pending background checks as presented. Shayna Maynard in food service, Danae Newsmer in database management, Richard Thomas in transportation, and Anthony Caruso also in transportation.
Kara has made the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second.
Motion by Kara, second by Mark, to accept the recommendation of these four support staff hires for the 2021-22. And do you need a correction on that in the motion that is proposed to read that, those correct years? Any other discussion or questions from the board? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Thank you. That was a dense agenda, and I appreciate all the contributions from our community members, as well as our administrators, and our educators, and our board members. We now would like to move into executive session, as we do need to discuss the Title IX litigation and other aspects of that litigation in executive session. There is a potential motion before the board to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing those legalities.
I move to have the board go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to potential legal action, as an executive session is clearly necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Second.
There's a motion by Mark and a second by Heather, and the time for the motion being proposed is what time is it? 8:50? Sorry. Let's put that at 8:51. Is there any discussion or are there any questions from the board concerning the motion to enter into executive session? Jody, please call the roll.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
And the motion to enter into that session does pass again, at 8:51. We will be hosting this session for the board and the old ordinance, just right over here, Peter. Thank you to Mr. Uckman and the technology team for beaming us over to our students. I imagine we have some. Go Badgers, thank you for joining us and streaming that to our patrons, so I appreciate that. I do not believe there will be any action from the board coming out of this meeting, though we will reconvene to conclude our meeting and close it at that time. You all are welcome to stay. I cannot anticipate the length of that, but we will come back into open session for patrons to observe that. We don't expect any action out of this meeting. But just wanted to inform the community who might be interested in staying, we will convene back here to close our meeting after we are done with our business in exec session. With that, board members, please sit down.
Actually, I did change the link on the website, so going on the website, the one that was posted up there has it. I've got it.